Okay, I want to call the Charter and Rules Committee to order on March 13th at 7:02. We're 2 minutes late. I want to welcome Councilor Bacon from the committee and Councilor Bartley from Ward 3. And I'm expecting Councilor McGee shortly, and hopefully maybe some others. And we are going to go in order of the agenda. And the first item on the agenda, if you'd be willing to make a motion to take up the first item.
I'll make a motion to take up item 1.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye. We're on a roll. Okay, my name is Terry Murphy, by the way. I guess I should introduce myself. So I'm the oldest counselor going. Okay, the first item on the agenda is a resident's petition in support of a non-binding ballot question as to whether the HG&E should offer fiber optic internet for purchase by residents. Petition also implores HG&E to conduct a feasibility study for a gradual rollout. And then the findings of this study are to be presented at the City Council meeting by April 2022 or sooner. So if I can ask the signatures, if anyone wants to speak in favor of that petition.
I'll make a motion to suspend rules to allow the public to speak.
Okay,
For
second?
2 minutes
Okay.
each.
So if there's anyone in favor of this petition, if you could come up to the microphone and give your name and your address. Yep.
I think it's working. Hi, my name is Laura Clampett. My address is 182 Locust Street. Was one of the petitioners, and I just wanted to say that we appreciate, all the work that HG&E does. They've been a great asset to our city, and they currently provide high-speed fiber optic internet service to commercial customers, and we as residents would love to be able to purchase those services as well. So we would like to encourage HG&E to explore that option and present those findings in a public manner, and to do a study of a partial or gradual rollout using the infrastructure that they already have for the commercial network and rolling it out that way. We've seen the figures for the full rollout of $20 million or so, and understand that maybe that's not feasible at this time, but we would appreciate HG&E looking into doing a partial rollout and gradually rolling out those services to residents. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ken Lefebvre, also a petitioner, 277 Suffolk Street. I just wanted to add to the previous comment that HG&E actually has a substantial network that is already set out across the city, particularly within the densest areas. And while there would be some cost of incorporating that into residential communities, such as splicing lines closer to actual houses and hiring customer service staff, to some degree, there's already been a large capital investment within the city to build out this network. But the taxpayers at this time, unless you have a business and are willing to pay, I believe, several $100s a month for these connections, you don't have access to the very thing that your tax dollars have funded. So basically what we're saying is that we would like to at least see where this infrastructure already exists, the option for residents, folks with home businesses, folks who just want to use streaming services, et cetera, to have access to this, and then hopefully we invest that revenue into hopefully eventually expanding the network. And just to sort of emphasize, this is a non-binding question to call for a feasibility study. Of course, if that proves entirely infeasible, then there's nothing more I would ask of the city. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay. Do you mind if I ask Mr. Lavelle to come in and make a comment?
Not at all.
Mr. Lavelle, can you come to the microphone for a minute, Jim? Just, you've seen the petition. I just want to know what your thoughts are and how far you are in terms of doing this.
So in general, we are supportive of the concept of municipal telecommunication services, and we've been doing it. I just need to correct the last gentleman. This is not taxpayer supported. It's entirely self-supporting. In fact, there's benefits that accrue back to the gas and electric ratepayers based on the commercial operation that we run. We would love to be able to get the service to the residents. We are a capital-intensive operation on the utility side, And we're looking at a $30 million build out, maybe more than that when we get the final numbers done. So with the other competing capital interests that we have, we're just completing a 5-year capital program of $75 million in upgrades to our hydro generating plants and our transmission and substation infrastructure. So, there's really not the room and the resources to do a full build out as was referenced. So we have been, for the last several months, looking at a gradual build to see if that would be viable. But there's still a lot of work that needs to be done in that regard. Kirk Jonah here, he's our director of information technology and telecommunication. He and his team have been doing some good work. They're also working with other municipalities in our area that are working on their projects so that we can get some lessons learned, and we already have gained some valuable lessons learned that if we eventually take that step will help us very much.
Okay. Councilor Bacon?
Thank you. Just a quick question. I did a quick read of some emails before the meeting, and my interpretation of it was that the folks filed the petition to try to be sure to get some information relative to the feasibility. It sounds like you're doing feasibility work now. So I'm wondering if that feasibility work is going to continue, and would you be willing to, say, come back to a meeting or come into another committee meeting to share updates on that information? I'm just trying to figure out if we need to have a ballot question to get the questions answered, which I'm hearing. So I'm just wondering.
I would suggest you don't need a ballot question because, we're supportive of the concept. If we can make business sense of it, we're going to move forward. We're not quite there yet. We have to manage all the risks to this thing too, and there's capital risks, there's operational risks, and those will all fall back on the ratepayer if we don't have all of our ducks in a row. So some of the build-outs that are going on around us that we're involved in, again, they're going to be going on for the next several months. So I would say that we will have completed at least the gradual build-out analysis probably by the second quarter of next year.
So a gradual build-out analysis by, say, next June, you think?
Yes, and that's June of 2020.
Right.
Let me just
Thank you.
Take 1 second to introduce City Councilor Todd McGee, Ward 7, and the Council President, and Councilor at Large Rebecca Lisi, also here. Anything, Todd? Okay, Rebecca? I'm
Thanks.
Councilor Lisi, sorry.
Not at all.
I'm very informal.
Thanks so much for coming down, Mr. Lavelle. I guess through previous conversations that we've had this issue of fiber network and citywide wireless throughout Holyoke before different committees. And it seems that one of the reasons why the petitioners wanted to file this petition was to help you gauge the interest and support, because I think that what we've heard is that the surveying that you've done in the past to gauge support has been somewhat piecemeal. And so I think in some ways the petitioners are trying to help you get a better or more holistic read of public support and sentiment toward the fiber network.
Honestly, I don't think a petition or the ballot question will do anything. The survey data is as good as you get. It's probably as accurate as the ballot data you get. It's more accurate than the ballot data. And we're actually updating we do a customer survey probably every 3 years. So we will be updating that in this current calendar year.
Thank you.
Okay, any other comments? Entertain a motion.
One of the speakers would like to have another chance to speak.
Okay. Come on, yep, come on back. Thank you.
I just want to point out that it's my understanding that that survey that's been done has been done by phone, so you would only receive that survey if you have a landline. So, I just hope that that portion of things is revised, because I do think you're missing a large portion of your market who may be interested in this service, but no longer has a landline for much of the same reasons that they want this service. So, thank you.
Thank you. I will say this, if I can, since it's my, You know, a ballot question certainly would gauge whether or not the community thinks it's a good idea. And obviously, you're going to have to do your own marketing and analysis as well. So, I mean, I certainly don't see any problem with putting this. It's a non-binding question. It's 3 years out in terms of reporting. So, I'll entertain a motion from the committee.
Motion would be to allow the non-binding question as a ballot question.
Second.
Motion is to not break our furniture. No, motion would be to approve the non-binding ballot question.
And just as a point of
Yeah,
clarification,
Yeah.
would this be going on the November ballot?
Yes.
November, for November.
Second or no?
I'll second it.
Okay,
I don't
motion
see
is
no-
made by Councilor McGee, seconded by Councilor Bacon. Any last comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? 0? Okay. Well, it will be on the November ballot.
Well, it has to go
Well, you
before the
still have
full
to go
council.
before the
Council.
full council.
Oh, I'm sorry. It might be on the city.
There you
This may be the shortest part of the meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, motion to take up item 2.
Motion is to take up item number 2.
Second,
Okay, all in favor?
aye.
Okay, introduced by Councilor Michael Sullivan, ordered that Article 2, Section 42-41, organization compensation be changed to allow for a stipend for fire commissioners. Make a motion? You take it up? Oh, we already did, okay.
We took it up, it's on the table.
I know Councilor Sullivan is upstairs at the CPA meeting.
No.
He did,
We can table it till later.
he did say, you know, his thoughts on it, if we wanted to just do it, his thoughts were that his hope would be if we had a stipend, that we would get more people interested in being involved. That was his primary focus on it. But we could also table it until he comes, it's up to you.
Table
I would-
he can come down with what he's looking for as a price as well as, you know.
So the motion is
Motion is to table.
Second.
second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion to take up item 3?
Second.
Okay, item 3, introduced by Councilor Nelson R. Roman, order that the city amend its charter to replace the mayor as the chair of the school committee and make the mayor an ex-officio member, allowing the school committee to elect its own chair. Thoughts on it?
I'll
I know.
comment. I don't think it's an unusual model. I don't personally have strong feelings on it. I'm not sure the timing is particularly correct since we're under receivership for the foreseeable future. So at this point, the school committee is really not making any decisions. But I'm not opposed to it either. So I'm not sure what the motivation behind the order was. I don't know if others here can speak to that or not. So I'm sort of neutral on it.
Yeah, I'm kind of the same, but,
I have no information on it.
okay. I mean, I will say.
Make a motion,
Okay, go ahead.
well, go ahead.
No, I will say that when this first happened, it was with Mayor Prue, and I know he wanted to, it was the first time the mayor was getting involved with school committees, and I know he wanted to have an active voice. But it really hasn't been an active voice for a long time. And nor have they been really the chair of the meeting, so. I mean, I think there's some validity
Name
to it.
only?
In name only, yeah. And, you know, I certainly think the chair of the school committee should be a school committee person, so. So I would have no problem with it, but that's, I know that rationale is like 35 years ago, so. It's been a while.
Can table it for now, have the mayor come in, school committee members, see what they want.
Could I, that's
Oh.
school committee, okay?
There's a couple of us here.
On
Hi.
suspension of rules? You
Yes,
wanna-
yes. if
Suspend
we
the
could.
rules, allow comment.
All right.
Second.
Okay,
All in
for 2
favor?
minutes?
Aye.
Aye, 2 minutes? Okay, if you,
So, my name is Mildred Lefebvre. I'm actually the Ward 1 School Committee member and the current vice chair of the Holyoke School Committee. It kind of got us all surprised because I was not aware that that was something that was moved forward. I do know that in other cities, the mayor is the chair of the school committee, and then you have your vice chair. At this point, we're just asking to have it tabled or dismissed. We're all working good together right now, and I don't think there needs to be any changes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Motion to table? I mean, unless there's others that want to speak under suspension. Motion to table?
Oh,
Oh, you have to
But
come
come
to
up
the mic and give your name and address, please?
Erin Fontaine Brunel, school committee member at large. I live at 1 Woodland Street in Ward 3, and I would just like to say that, I mean, I can only speak for myself, but we agree with what Mildred Lefebvre had to say on the topic.
Okay, thank you.
So, I mean, I can make a motion to table, or I can make a motion to
Leave to withdraw.
just say complied with. and-
Complied with. Motion is complied with. Second on the motion.
Well, can I, when we say complied with?
We
or-
considered it,
Okay.
Leave to withdraw,
And-
I think
Motion,
probably.
I say,
You want to do a leave it to withdraw?
yeah.
All right, so
We could do
motion
that
is to
too.
leave to withdraw. Is there a
second.
second?
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Withdraw? Okay.
Sometimes we just handle
Opposed?
it that
No.
way.
All good.
Motion to take up item 4?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
All right.
Aye.
Okay, item 4, introduced by Councilor David K. Bartley, Daniel B. Bresnahan, and Michael Sullivan. Ordered the City Council create a home rule petition that limits the executive branch mayor to asking only one government body, such as City Council or Holyoke Redevelopment or HEDIC or Holyoke Housing Authority, to purchase, declare surplus, or take via eminent domain any real property. The home rule petition would mandate the mayor, the executive branch, gets only one bite at the apple. Once a vote is made, then that shall remain in effect for 2 years. The purpose is to effectuate the governing body's vote and the intent of the city charter, city ordinance, and mass general laws, that the city council maintain a decision-making role in all matters concerning real property affecting the city of Holyoke. This order comes because of a recent $30,000 purchase of 519 Dwight Street, directly across the street from City Hall, by the Holyoke Housing Authority, HHA, recorded 11/30/17. Earlier that year, the City Council had a vote of the committee on June 5th, 2017, and a vote of the full council on June 6th, 2017, by an 8-3 margin, denied taking 519 Dwight Street via eminent domain. However, the mayor and director of OPED, Office of Planning and Economic Development, persuaded the HHA to procure the site for $30,000 from the property owner via a straight purchase and sale agreement. The deed to HHA from the site owner was recorded on 11/30/17 at Book 21967, page 228, in the Hampden County Registry of Deeds. Thereafter, the City of Holyoke, via CDBG funds not approved by Holyoke City Council, but given approval by HUD, reimbursed HHA via a check dated 1/29/18. Lastly, I note for the City Council record that the HHA has 4 members appointed by the mayor and 1 by the governor. Should we?
Open it up to
Council-
the file maker of the order.
Okay, Councilor Bartley?
I don't know if you had, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't know if you had a chance to read some of the packet. That's only a portion of, I just want to provide the documentary evidence of what happened. And the reason I wrote out that order so long, I knew this would take a while to come before a committee, and a lot of this is almost kind of ancient history. But as the order indicated, the little park across the street, it was the mayor's wish to take the property. It was empty parcel across the street. It was the mayor's wish and OPED director's wish to take the property and create a park using block grant funds, $390,000. Now that's $390,000 not allocated for anything else, Mr. Chairman. So it's not allocated for roads or sidewalks, and we get calls on that, so the public should know, $390,000 went to create a little pocket park directly across the street from City Hall, whereas there is a large park, Heritage State Park, just east of City Hall. There's another large park with $1.8 million of investment at Veterans Park, just west of City Hall. But what happened is the City Council, because we have authority through Mass General Law, the City Council has the authority to grant or deny a sale. So the mayor would negotiate a sale, but only the City Council can approve the sale. In this case, in committee, we denied it 3-2. At full City Council, we denied it 8-3. There were 4 missing members. This is before the change to make the City Council 13 members. We thought at the time that would have ended this, because the City Council vote is determinative. I mean, that was it. There's no debate after that. And that vote happened, as we said, in June of 17. In August of 17, through a special meeting, I never got notice of it. And at that time, the Holyoke Housing Authority, who, by the way, has, their minutes are outstanding. Whoever does them should be really complimented. But I never received any notice. And at that time, City Council, remember, there was a transition at Holyoke Housing, an administrative department. They weren't sending out minutes, and they weren't sending out meeting notices for a period of 8 months. And that was right during that period. So I received no notice of a special meeting from Holyoke Housing Authority. Whereas today, and I brought my packet I received the minutes of the last meeting and the agenda for the next meeting for Holyoke Housing, as I generally do. That I did not. At that special meeting, there was one commissioner, Commissioner Wilson, who questioned this pretty extensively in the meeting minutes, which you have. But it passed nevertheless 4-1, and here was a deal that was created. And this is completely around City Council approval. And the deal was this: Holyoke Housing Authority will purchase the property, not by eminent domain, but purchase the property through a straight purchase and sale from the property owner. And these are all in the meeting minutes. It was promised to the Holyoke Housing Authority, you purchased the property. They did. They closed on it November 30th, as indicated in the you purchased it. The City of Holyoke, without a vote of the City Council, just through the mayor's power alone, took previously unallocated funds from CDBG, again, not used for the Boys and Girls Club, not used for Meals on Wheels, none of that. So when I get these calls, I love when I get calls, how come we don't support these programs? It was used to reimburse Holyoke Housing Authority, and those are the copy, you have a copy of the check, and that allowed the city, that allowed Holyoke Housing Authority to be made whole. So Holyoke Housing Authority owned that lot. The city then invested the $390,000 from block grant funds, again, no sidewalks, no roads, no Meals on Wheels, into a park, a little tiny park across the street. That's the backstory, Mr. Chairman, in a nutshell, and you have all the documentation of it. This is pretty much a chaotic run because, as you're aware, Mr. Chair, there's very few things that we, just because of the way the systems work with Mass General Law, the mayor has a lot of power, and I respect those decisions, that the mayor should have a lot of authority. In this case, I think the mayor went beyond the kind of type of authority, that went beyond what he should have done. But what can we do? Well, we can ask for a home rule petition such as this, but frankly, Mr. Chairman, if, as you know from your past experience, we can pass a home rule petition even unanimously here, But if that home rule petition is not signed off by the mayor, then it dies. I'm thinking the mayor, based upon his actions, probably wouldn't want to limit his so-called power. Because this would allow him, again, if we take a vote in city council, if there's for real property, if there's a project that is, again, CDBG eligible, which is basically this side of Northampton Street, that's in very general terms, the mayor can do the exact same thing. He can go to another city board, he can ask the city board to purchase it, then he can use CDBG funds to reimburse. I don't think that's right. I'm glad I had a chance to finally say that in a public way. And respectfully to the mayor, whom I respect tremendously, and the OPED director, Ms. Marrero. But I think what they did by circumventing city council, using public funds, I think there's got to be some kind of a consequence to that. Whether that's a symbolic city council vote, because that's what it would be, but there should be a consequence to it, that the city council, the representatives of the people, say to the executive branch and to the administrative staff that what you did in using public dollars, though there may be legality to it, shouldn't be allowed. And maybe the mayor would come back in here and give his reasons for it, for denying a home rule petition. But to me, that was the best solution I could come up with at the time. I really haven't thought of a better one. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilor Bartley, and I'd like to recognize Councilor Bresnahan and Councilor LeBron Martinez for. Yep.
Mayor's here, maybe he wants to weigh in. Mayor's here, maybe he wants to weigh in.
Well, Councilor Bresnahan, this is also, you co-signed on this order if you'd like to have a chance to address it? No. Okay.
Nail on the head.
Councilor Sullivan's back.
Okay, Councilor Sullivan is now here as well. Councilor Leahy is walking in the door. Okay, so, and Councilor Sullivan, you also signed the order on number 4. Would you like to comment on it before we move on, or? Give me a minute to find a seat. Yep, try that one. Okay. And then I would like to let the mayor come and comment.
That's what I was gonna ask.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah. They're all on the
I do
table.
that now?
I sent them to the committee, then it's all about it. Yeah.
Want to entertain a motion
You
to?
want to suspend him
Yeah,
again?
motion is suspend the rules. The mayor is here if he wants
Second.
to address it.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Mr. Mayor, would you like to come up to the mic and address the issue?
Mr. Chairman, do you have questions or?
Well, you heard the comments. I can offer a question, and this is based on the reading that I did.
Yeah.
With all due respect, it appears that we made an agreement with the funding source for Lyman Terrace without, at that point, all the properties that we were making the agreement with.
That's not accurate. I don't know what agreement you're speaking about.
Well, I mean, I see in the minutes of several in the Housing Authority minutes, if I'm not mistaken, that the reason they were being asked to do it was that the city would potentially be jeopardized for some funding, because if we didn't get that property, we would not be living up to the commitment we made to the funding authority, I assume the state.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, in short, as Councilor Bartley admitted himself, the process was completely legal. I stand by every decision the administration made, and we're really proud of the outcome of the beautiful park across the street. So, as Marcos laid out in the memo that he sent to the council this afternoon, because he couldn't be here, we made a series of decisions. Community development block grant funds, as you know, are the purview of the mayor. The city council can certainly make the recommendations, but at the end of the day, mayors in every city and town around the country make the final determinations of how to spend that money. And so it was pretty clear that a couple of councilors in particular were not happy with how the mayor was allocating the CDBG funds. They wanted it to go towards demolition of certain properties in the city or other priorities that they had. And so we saw the vote against the taking of the property across the street as sort of not so much against the project itself, but again, sort of how we decided to spend CDBG dollars. So again, we were very transparent. It was a public meeting. The Housing Authority, like every public commission's posted. Anybody could have attended that meeting. Marcos and I were very transparent. We said the City Council voted against taking that property, and this is why we're here before you, to ask the Housing Authority to take the property on the city's behalf. The commission voted 4-1 to make that happen, and the City Council itself voted to recommend $190,000 in year one to actually pursue the pedestrian plaza across the street. And the Housing Authority was an obvious connection in that they have a big investment in the Lyman Terrace project. And so those of you in the audience who may not be familiar with the project, if you go out City Hall in the back tonight, into the back parking lot, you look across the street on Dwight, you'll see a very well developed park that wasn't there before that actually connects Lyman Terrace to the center city and government center here at City Hall. There's hanging lights ahead. It's being used by both residents of Lyman Terrace and also folks who work here at City Hall for lunch, and just a really great amenity. We hear a lot of great compliments about it from folks in the neighborhood and visitors, tourists, and things like that. So I think it's a wonderful investment of community development block grant funds. We followed every guideline. HUD has, I know Councilor Bartley himself has been in communication with HUD about this, and they were very clear when they got back to him and said, absolutely nothing wrong with what the mayor and the planning director did with the Housing Authority. We're actually very proud of the project they did in the city of Holyoke. So I'll be very transparent. I think certain councilors are upset that we actually pulled off a very successful project that has really changed the face of Dwight Street across City Hall. And as Councilor Bartley himself acknowledged, this is a home rule petition that I don't intend to sign. And I think it's more of a symbolic attempt on behalf of Councilor Bartley because he's not happy with the project and the outcome. So
let me follow up one more
go
time.
ahead.
Again, as I read some of this, when we submitted the application with Lyman Terrace and the funding and indicating that we're going to do a park, that parcel was part of that particular project. Am I correct?
I don't think it was part of that project, no. It was never originally part of the Lyman Terrace project.
Well, then some of the notes in meetings where it indicates that we were concerned that we might lose some of the funding if we didn't get that parcel. That's not true?
Yeah, lose some of the community development block grant funding, but that's separate from the actual funding for Lyman Terrace. So we have to meet a spending rate for community development block grant funds every year, and so the project had already been tied up 2 years because we funded it over a 2-year period. $190,000 the first year, and then $200,000 the second year. The council actually recommended $190,000 the first year, and then $0 the second year.
Okay.
And I would just point out, Councilor Bartley mentioned Meals on Wheels, and as a chair of the committee that actually oversees CDBG, I would expect that there would be a general knowledge of the separation between public services would actually go towards Boys and Girls Club, Meals on Wheels, and programs that we actually invest in, but that's capped at 15%. So even if we wanted to use money from sidewalks or economic development, parks, we actually wouldn't legally be able to transfer that into programs like Meals on Wheels, Providence Ministries, and things like that.
Okay. Councilor Bacon.
Thanks. So I just have a clarifying question relative to trying to weed through all the documents.
Of course.
Because it came to the city council as taking the property by eminent domain, but at the end, it ended up being a direct sale. So it didn't seem like there was ever any disagreement on the part of the owner of the property to want to sell it. So what became confusing to me was why it ever came to the city council in the first place, because you have clearly stated, and we clearly understand as mayor, you do have authority relative to the final use of the CDBG money, even though we go through the citizen advisory committee, the board, the city council committee, and hopefully you're synthesizing those comments and priorities when you're making your decision. So there's really not any question about that.
Yeah.
But the question I found myself having was, why didn't you just do it all through CDBG in the first place? It just seemed like it became a very convoluted sort of adversarial process that could have been completely avoided. And I think we're all better served, and the people we represent are better served when we're trying to work together than getting into these
Yeah, no, I agree. Even when we use
adversarial situations that
it wasn't
are
adversarial.
unnecessary.
It was actually it was a friendly taking. So we actually negotiated the $30,000
between
with the property owner. But the even if we use community development block grant funds, we can't unilaterally just negotiate the property without a vote of the city council if we wanted to use actual the power of the city council and the city to acquire the property. We needed a city entity, a city body to take that vote. And a housing authority as a public commission, public entity has eminent domain taking powers as well. And so absent a vote of the city council, there needed to be a public body like the housing authority to act in its power that they're granted in their establishing charter that gives them the power to actually negotiate and take the property.
Well, the clarification that I was looking for, because in the documents, and maybe they're written in a different format, so they come across differently, it didn't appear that the sale was a taking. It just appeared that it was a sale, which it would be different.
Well,
So it didn't appear that a taking was necessary at all.
was a friendly taking by the housing authority. But again, even if it was a friendly negotiation with the owner, they used to own Pizza Palace, again, it would still require a vote of a public corporation like the housing authority or the city council to acquire it. So even if we had an agreement, we still would have had to come to the city council at the time that we did for the authorization to purchase the property.
Okay, and if you remember, what was the price that came to the city council? Do you remember? For the taking?
I would imagine it was around the same amount of money. I don't remember off the top of my head. I think it was 30 grand.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Chair? Mr. Chair?
Yes.
It's in the meeting minutes, so this is how, I'm sorry his honors, I don't mean to take, I sound like he was taking this personally about mentioning my name several times, and I don't take this personally at all. It was simply about the process, Mr. Chair. The process was this. There was and to the Ward 5 councilor's question, the eminent domain price was $20,000. So what, and it's in the meeting minutes, in the approved meeting minutes, it wasn't $30,000. So what the mayor and CDBG director did, they negotiated upwards from $20,000 to $30,000. So they actually spent more through CDBG funds. Again, they lost here, and that should have terminated the project. But you know, their resolve is excellent, and I commend them for that. But they did what they did. They went to Holyoke Housing Authority through a special meeting, and then the authority voted 4-1 to support it, and that's fine. And I wrote it right in my meeting minutes, right in the order that HUD approved it. It's a one-sentence approval. It didn't look like a terribly thorough analysis, but they approved it. But I think the latitude in CDBG funds is very wide. I think that, again, if we're gonna have a transparent process, you know, we have to take our sometimes we have to take our lumps. I mean, the administration lost that one. They should have used the money elsewhere, with several parks already proximate to the east, west, and to the north, but it wasn't good enough. So to me, it's a nice park, but $390,000, Mr. Chair, on about less than a quarter acre should afford you a fairly nice park. I think, and it is a nice park. Could have been used elsewhere. Could there have been a better process? That's all I'm simply trying to say. Thank you.
Councilor Sullivan, did you want to address it?
Councilor Vacan summed up my thoughts pretty well. The only thing I'd like to stress is that it's not just the city council that and it's not just the city council that objected to the use of the funds this way. It was a Citizens Advisory Commission also. And I believe that vote was unanimous not to approve the funds for that as well. All right, and that through this process, I understand the mayor has the prerogative to spend those funds however he wants. But when you've got your own Citizens Advisory Commission against it, our Government Relations Committee against it, and the full city council against it, that's 3 strikes, and that should hold up.
Okay, thank you. I just want to read the minutes just to make sure that my interpretation is, if it's incorrect, I want to know. So this is from the Housing Authority minutes. This park has been part of both the low-income housing tax credits applications as well as the Mass Works applications from the inception of this development project. That's one paragraph. And then a little while later, Marcos Marrero went on to explain the potential ramifications with funding sources should we not be able to see this to fruition, since it has been part of the funding applications from the start. So, he
I
did
believe it talks to a park generally within the Lyman Terrace project itself. Marcos isn't here tonight. He could probably answer that more specifically. I would also just point out that the Citizens Advisory Council, like the City Council, also recommended $190,000 to this project when we originally proposed it.
Yeah, this is my first time involved with this issue, but I'm not concerned about the park as much as the process. I think,
Yeah.
and as you and I have had other experiences where, I just think if we've submitted an application that it appears we did to Mass Works and to the low-income housing tax credit, and we included those parcels that we didn't own, and potentially we were jeopardizing it if we didn't own them, I think that's putting the cart before the horse. I mean, I would think we'd want to own something before we say this is what we're going to do. That's my...
Yeah, and I don't think that's the case. And we can follow up with information about that.
And
Councilor Sullivan.
I do believe the 190,000 originally approved by the Citizens Advisory Committee, the thought was that was 190,000 for the park, and that was it. That it wasn't going to blossom to 300,000. 390.
Preference on what you want to do?
Well-
Just then it's... I would just say we've had the hearing been complied with.
I think it's complied with.
Yeah,
I mean-
I think so too. Okay with that?
Well, in summary, we clearly had a disagreement on priorities of funding. The mayor had the final say on it, and so he had it. And so we have had an airing of the concerns about the process, which we can hope have been heard and hopefully can happen in a better way going forward, given that the mayor has indicated clearly he's not going to support a home rule petition. It seems that we would be creating it for simply the purpose of having it be denied. So I would defer to the maker of the order to see what further action he might seek from the committee.
Well, my order's my order. If like I said, I admit it from the start, and I put words into his mouth because he spewed them back out. He just said he won't sign it, which is so obvious. Bobby Little could have told you that one, but that's the way it goes. But that doesn't mean we should sit here like a lamb and just take it. To me, I respect your votes. You know that. So however you want to move it forward is or not, that's okay. I'd like to see it just moved out of committee. If you want to recommend it, that's fine. If you don't, that's okay too. But the record's pretty clear. The way the process was done, the way I look at it, going around, the city council took an emphatic vote, no, 8-3. No, we're not going to take this property. We disagree with this contract. That is the end of the line 99 times out of 100. But the mayor went to he went to another body, he had the other body negotiate and use funds not appropriated, not approved by this body, so that's another one, that's two. So he took the parcel and used funds not approved by city council, but if you want to accept that, that's your call. This is the way I look at it. Clearly, he's not going to sign this, and I respect the mayor's office, and that's okay. But I think the statement should be made loud and clear that we disagree with that process. That's my 2 cents. Thank you.
Motion is made by Councilor, did you want to say something? Jim? Sorry. Councilor Leahy?
Yeah, thank you, and I appreciate it. I'm sorry that I was running a little bit late. I think maybe we're putting some sort of focus on maybe where we should not be putting focus. The mayor wanted this project. He was clear about that. He played within the rules. And so him going to the housing, I think maybe we should be a little bit more upset with the housing authority. And they knew the way that each group had voted, but yet they did this. The mayor wanted this, and the mayor, I don't think, did anything wrong. He's playing within the rules. And so I guess that's where I'm held up.
Thank you.
Councilor Sullivan.
Oh, Councilor Sullivan.
Yeah, I think I'm correct, all the members of the Housing Authority are also appointed by the mayor. Am I right? And my only problem with, I think we've made our point clear, and I fully support Councilor Bartley on this, having been down this other route twice myself with a home rule petition, regardless of what else. I think we're beating a dead horse trying to go that route.
So a motion is made by Councilor McGee to, or say that the order has been complied with?
Well, we're kind of parsing how we're doing our motions, since on the other one, we handled it differently, but I'm okay with seconding that. Philosophically, I'm very much in support of the points made by the makers of the order, because I think it just doesn't serve our community well to end up in these adversarial situations when people are having different priorities, and I just think we can do a better job of that. I think the airing of this is a good thing, because I think it's important to do when there are fundamental disagreements on process, and I do think it helps having good government and having things be more transparent. Because it's very hard, even when you're sitting on the council, if you're not sitting in the room for the meetings, to wade through a month's worth of notes and minutes and nuances. So I do think it's helpful for people in the public to understand, but I do second the motion because I think the positions are clear, the authority is clear, and it is what it is.
Okay, on the motion? All in
Aye.
favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Make a motion to take up item 5.
Motion to take up item 5. Second.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, introduced by Councilor Joseph M. McGivern, ordered that the order for city council should be as follows. Order that the following ballot question and summary be placed on the ballot for a special election on April 30th, 2019, or another date voted on by the city council. Ballot question: shall the city of Holyoke be allowed to exempt from the provisions of Proposition 2 1/2, so-called, the amounts required to pay for the bond issued in order to build 2 new middle schools in the city? Yes or no? And provided further that said question shall be deemed approved if a majority of the persons voting thereon shall vote yes. A summary of the question: on December 2018, of course that's going to be a different date, the Holyoke City Council voted without taking a position to place the question on the ballot, which will allow the voters to decide whether or not the city shall be allowed a temporary exclusion of the levy limit for purposes of raising funds to pay debt service costs to finance the development project for 2 new middle schools in the city. The exclusion of the levy limit shall cease at the time the bond is repaid in full. The question will be approved and the debt exclusion accepted if a majority of the voters voting on the ballot question voted yes.
Before we get into this, I just want to make a motion to suspend rules so that the public can speak to us on this matter.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so obviously, I'm expecting this is probably why we got a lot of people here tonight. So,
Usually the maker of the order is at every meeting.
I know. But, so just, and I've got a lot of questions, but I also want to make sure that everybody gets a chance as well. But I want to start off by just saying that the ballot question as proposed to me does not inform the public anywhere near enough in terms of what the impact would be, both in terms of finances, in terms of taxes, in terms of what happens with other schools, and a variety of other things. So that's a concern I definitely have. And I also want, up front, I'm going to let you know I have serious concerns about a special election and the potential. The last special election we had, 11% of the people voted, and I really do not want to be, I would prefer not to be in a situation where we end up with 5 or 6% of the Holyoke populace determining what's going to happen for the 100% of the populace. With that said, unfortunately, we don't get the election turnouts that I would like to get in my idealistic world, but that is a concern I have if we do a special election, that we're going to have a very small percentage of people making a major decision, and this is a major decision in this community on all aspects, and we need to deal with it as a community. I'm going to offer one, and I want to thank the people that have contacted me, and there have been many on both sides. I want to thank the people for showing respect to difference of opinions, for listening to my comments as I listen to their comments, and I really encourage the community to continue to work together wherever we go with this, to respect each other's opinion and try to do what's best for education, try to do what's best for the whole community, and try to make sure that we end up, whatever happens out of this, that we are together to try to make Holyoke better. So,
Just one thing.
Councilman McGee?
The maker of the order had a conflict for tonight, so cannot make it. As we all know, Councilor McGivern is pretty much at every single meeting. But he'll be home, in essence, watching it or watching a review of it. So he will be updated on this, but he did have a conflict for tonight.
Okay. Councilor Lee.
Yeah, thank you. I received some phone calls at home, and so essentially what we're facing with tonight, right, is one thing. It's just putting it on the ballot or not putting it on the ballot, right? And so there's one way to do it. There's two ways to do it. One is to have the city council vote to put it on the ballot, or the second way is having the people who'd like this, or to get enough signatures, right? I think it's like 10% of
Petition.
I think it's 10% of the people who are registered to vote. And so I'm guessing that's probably, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but maybe 12,000 or so. So it just seems like we're getting a lot of things in front of the city council lately that people want us to push through, whereas, and this is nothing to do with the building of two middle schools. It's just why, I guess essentially, in some eyes, why are we rushing this? And the reason I say this, the last meeting that they had, we had a finance committee meeting already scheduled, and all the people, the members of the finance committee, could not go to that meeting. I guess there's a second meeting that's going to be Monday, the day after St. Patrick's Day, up at Holyoke Community College at 2 p.m. Now, I can't make that meeting because I'm working. So it just seems like we need a public dialogue, pro or con. I do think that we need to do a rehab of schools, and I certainly think that our children deserve that. But I'm just thinking that we should have a lot of public dialogue, and having a special election that's going to maybe cost north of $50,000 to having 10% people. So 5.5% of the people who vote or who decide this. I think we have to really think this out. Thank you.
Councilor Bacon.
Thank you. So we've had a couple of discussions in various committees. One is the advantage that the first person in on an issue gets, which is what occurs when you have a special election, which very few people show up at because of the very nature of the special election. And the other is a comment that was made in the other context of the purchase in the eminent domain of the cart before the horse. And so then the understanding that's come forth is we must do this by a date certain or the opportunity will be lost. So in all my reading relative to the facts of the matter is, for one thing, in a question that would go before the public in such a serious matter as this, we would have to know a number of things so that the voters could be making an informed vote. First of all, how much money are we talking about that the voters are making a decision about incurring? How long will this debt last? Are we mortgaging the city for the next generation or maybe two? with this vote that people would be taking. And right now, there's some information going out around the community, but the big discussion, part of the big discussion that I was available for was hearing the percentage of reimbursement. Now, typically in school projects, when we looked at Holyoke High, we were at 80% reimbursement. In this project, we're hearing the reimbursement rate would be more around 58%. Why is that? Because a number of the costs involved in this would not be reimbursable at all. And so it brings to mind the question, why don't we rehab? We just got done doing a huge rehab project at Lyman Terrace. Why can't we rehab our buildings and repurpose them as we just did with that particular example? That type of a project, I'm understanding from people who've researched it more than I, would be eligible for 80% reimbursement. The other thing that I would put out to the public is that when our financial advisor came before us and we talked about this very concept, she said that she had a very hard time seeing how at the tax cap that we're at and with the monthly and annual carrying costs of such borrowing, how the city budget could meet paying back the bond while meeting the service needs of the city. So we, in these debates, talk about taking care of our community, but at the same time, we're having very serious discussions about how are we funding our police department, how are we funding our fire department, and to be funding debt at the expense of those is a very real place that we will be needing to make the public aware, because we can't pay for it all. So those are just this is a very complex matter. It has many, many more aspects to it, but those are the main points. And that information, in my view, must be made available to the voters prior to asking them to go to the ballot to encumber every taxpayer going forth for 30 years with something that they don't have a good understanding of. Thank you.
If I may, due to time, it's 8 o'clock. We have, as you can see, a ton of people here that want to speak. I know we all have our opinions and stuff on this matter, and we'll debate it in full council and probably after this, but I'd like to let them speak. And we do have people with kids. It's 8 o'clock. So for me, let's open it up to have them speak. One thing, since the crowd is big, we have to be respectful of time, depending on the total number of people, or we could make a motion to time limit it. I don't want to do that, but I'd ask that we respect it. If some people are going to go over, we're going to have to cap the time, just to put it out there. But I'd like to hear from them.
I'm certainly in agreement with that. Go ahead, Councilor.
Yeah, I think I just wanted to note that the meeting that's happening at HCC on Monday at 2 p.m. isn't about the middle school project at all. It's about the foundation budget for the schools and for public school and higher ed in the state. So it really is not relevant here. And I am interested in hearing what the public has to say, and I am thrilled to see so many families bringing children down to this important meeting. Thank you.
So we will, and I think all councilors are in agreement. So what we'd like to do is have you come to the microphone. Please make your name and address. Please keep your comments. Highlight what you want to say and give us the short version if possible.
Sorry, I just want to go first because this two are like running me nuts.
You sure they don't want to go first?
My family owns several houses.
Name and address.
Stephanie Garcia, 2 Dan Avenue, also 78 Northeast Street here in Holyoke. These are the twins. They go to Metcalf. My concern and my question is that the school department as a parent has been getting information from parents since, I believe, 2016. It's been like 4 years. And they have put out a proposal, planned out 2 beautiful buildings, gotten information about why we can't rehab buildings, why Lynch is not available, why all this, and they basically have studies that prove that those are more expensive reasons. So my question to you is, why in these 4 years that you know the school department has been doing this, haven't you prepared financially to support our children? That is my question. Because even before they were born, I've been advocating for middle schools, because I know it's not adequate. So I just wanted to say that.
Okay, thank you.
Ali, did you want to say something? Yes or no? Yes or no? They're waiting. No, okay.
Thank you. Thank you. Who would like to speak next?
Hi, I'm Hannah Kennedy, 85 Eastern Promenade. I also have 2 kids at Metcalf, a kindergartner and a preschooler, and this one hopefully will also be participating in the dual language program when it comes time. You know, it was very hard to hear what everyone in here was saying because I was out in the hallway, so I really don't know, you know, all the points that I believe you were speaking. But one of the concerns that you raised was that you were concerned that not enough people were going to vote. And to me, you know, if they don't care enough to come out and vote in the on this important matter, then they're saying that it doesn't matter to them. They're allowing other people to decide, you know, for them. So the percentage of the vote, I don't think should be as important as giving citizens the opportunity to vote on this matter. It's super important. My husband and I just bought a house at the end of 2017 here in Holyoke, and you know, one of our biggest concerns was the schools, and everyone told us we were crazy. Why would you move to Holyoke with small children? And we fell in love with Metcalf, and we're really happy there, and we're hoping that Holyoke can continue to provide us the education that we're going to need for our family. But if that's not the case, we won't be staying. And whether it means that we're going to take our children out of the district or we're going to sell our house and move to a different district, I mean, our family has to come first. And I really hope that that you guys understand that in order to build Holyoke, build the tax base, encourage young families like ours to move here, education is super important. You know, we want our kids to be able to grow up and be successful, and the foundation that they get is going to be the key to that. So I hope that you'll allow us to vote on this issue.
Thank you. Next.
Hi, John Aubin, 42 Clinton Avenue. I'm also the owner of Open Square, the development downtown. I'm an architect and a developer. I do numbers for development on a regular basis, and I do it also trying to optimize the best solutions. I'm not opposed to new schools. I've been trying to get the information I need to make a judgment on it, and I'm seeing a lot of misinformation out there. When I try to get information, it's very difficult to get. A simple example, there was an exchange on Facebook with which Councilor Leasley participated in. In the reports, there's a statement that says there's going to be $4.5 million in savings that could be allocated to more school funding. Later in that report, it says it breaks down the actual savings, and it says it's going to be $412,000 a year for operation savings. Councilor Leahy said the $4.5 million, and I asked, was yearly. I don't believe that's true, but if it is true, the debt service that the tax override is supposed to cover is less than $4 million. So if there's a $4 million in saving, 4.5, then why are we having debt override? So this is typical of the information that's out there. It's very difficult to find. As I said, I'm not opposed to schools. What I am opposed to is a tax override. Holyoke has the highest taxes in the state typically. I don't know if the commercial taxes, I don't know if it's true this year. I tried to find out. But I would gather in the last 10 years, we've been 1 or 2, more than 5 of the 10 years. Someone should be able to dig up that information. As a property owner, I'm not concerned about my taxes as it is. I would gladly pay the override amount as it stands. The problem is, I've got 500,000 square feet of vacant space and I want to develop it. And that's where the tax override makes a difference. It makes a difference for anyone who wants to come in and develop property, wants to improve it. people from the outside wanting to come in and develop, this is a big deal, and I can't emphasize that enough. Now, on the education side, I'm sure a new school would be an asset for everyone. But what a lot of people don't realize is there have been a lot of studies in the last 5 years that show that the neighborhood a child grows up in has more impact on their life earnings than anything else. So this is what we need to do. We need to bring people in. We need to bring economic development in. That kind of increase will increase a child's opportunity. So I get the benefit of a new school, but this is a one-sided argument. No one's evaluating the negative effect of it. At the same time, I'm trying to figure things out, and there's certain questions. Why is this a 30-day notice? Why do we have to vote on this so quick? And I've heard some answers, and they don't really ring true. The implication I've heard is that this is it, one shot deal. I haven't seen any evidence of that. I'm not sure why the state would say, do this deal or don't do anything. Doesn't make sense. The other thing is, I did see in the report, I see over and over again that the state building authority has approved and recommended, and all the reports I read, they are neutral on many things. The decision was made at the school committee. They made the recommendation. Now, I've been trying to evaluate the different proposals myself. It's very difficult. But one thing that stuck out recently for me is that there's a proposal there for one school for 1,100 students on the Lawrence Chestnut site. And I'm trying to find out why that was dropped, because that proposal is $22 million less than the other. Also, one of the big things that people are talking about...
Could I have you wrap up? I'm trying to make sure we
okay.
don't take too long
All right.
with any one person.
So, $23 million savings. One of the big things is equity. What more equity and better opportunity than bringing all our middle schoolers together? And so I haven't found the answer, but interestingly enough, I was at an event this morning, and the architects happened to be at that event. And so I asked Margot, what about the option for one school? And Margot, if I understand correctly, you said it was never considered. Well, that's what I heard. So let me finish.
We're not going to go through a dialogue here, so I'm going to have you wrap up.
So my question is, why not one school? Why are we separating our kids out? Somehow it doesn't seem right. That seems the opportunity for equity and to mix kids together. Also, the Lawrence School is in a much poorer neighborhood, and the Peck School is going to draw a much wealthier base. Are we, in effect, segregating our kids in the middle school? Why not one school? Why not save $23 million and bring all our kids together?
Okay, thank you. Next.
Hello, my name is Patrick O'Connor, 17 Cranberry Drive. I'd like to say that only a developer would think bringing 1,100 middle school students into one school is a good idea. I'm a school teacher. Housing 1,100 students in one school is not a good idea. I think if we think about that, 1,100 middle school students in one building could cause problems, and it could affect their education. I'm really emotional about this, and that's going to come off, and I apologize. Don't take me seriously when it comes to that. I have two children, 2 sons. I want the best for them. I want an education for them that will advance their lives. I don't want them in substandard schools. HB Lawrence is falling apart. Peck School is dangerous. This is what the report found, and it's in the report. And if Mr. Sullivan took the time to read the report, it's right on the school website. Obviously, he did not. If Mr. Sullivan attended the several school committee meetings that Mr. Dreich held, where he explained the plan, he would have the answers he's asking.
Yeah, just talk to us.
Thank you.
Don't talk to
I'm sorry. I get frustrated because this information has been given to the public, and I think certain people aren't attending those meetings. My wife's on, she's involved, and I know other people are involved, and this information has been communicated And I'm well aware that the person who spoke before me has chosen not to attend those meetings. But so I have sons, I want the best education for them. Those buildings are substandard. The report found that. Renovating HB Lawrence would not meet the needs of the school district. The report found that. Renovating HB Lawrence and rebuilding Peck would cost more money than building 2 new schools. We will have to pay for this eventually, and eventually we will pay more. You spoke about the ballot question not addressing the impact on taxes, and I agree. The ballot question does not address the impact. It does not address the impact that new middle schools will have on our children. And that's what it needs to address. This isn't just about taxes. This is about building a strong school system that will help the economy, that will change neighborhoods. That's what this is about. I hope you guys at least make the decision to bring this before the voters. Let us decide. And as someone said already, if people care, they will show up. What message are we sending if we say we're not willing to invest in our schools and we're not even willing to allow the voters to say whether or not we should invest? What message are we saying if we say we are going to invest? That's a message that not only people in Holyoke will hear, but people around Holyoke will hear that. We're investing in the school system. That's what we need to do. And I really hope you guys make the right decision. And I believe you will.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next.
Ian Nurier, 120 Morgan Street. That'll be a little hard to follow for me, so I'm going to keep it brief. But I also have 2 children, 1st grade and 3rd grade, in the Holyoke Public Schools. I just want to say that I really hope you guys move this forward to the City Council so that the City Council can vote on it and let the voters decide. Thanks.
Thank you.
Hi, Eileen Bresnahan Insurance on Whiting Farms Road, and I live on Pleasant Street in Holyoke. And first of all, I love children. I don't have any of my own, but education is the most important thing for a child because they get a good education and they grow up to be productive individuals in society, like I am. Anyways, all I'm asking is that maybe we can pull the reins and not, if we need to build schools, let's build them. If we can rehab them and save money, let's do that. But I believe they're trying to have this on an April ballot, a special election. I don't know if we really need to do that. Maybe the community could learn more about what the pros and cons are before we jump the gun. And believe me, if we need schools, we need schools. Believe you me, that's fine. But if we can rehab or redo something or just stop to think what we can do, that's fine too. But I don't think everybody in the community is aware of the options that we have. And that's all I'm asking is to have the options open. I am not saying, oh, I don't want schools built, because if we need them, let's build them. If we can rehab and do something, let's do that. But just take the time to think about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Racine. I live at 1145 Northampton Street. So 2 weeks ago, I attended the presentation put on by the Jones Whitsett architect and the superintendent, and I found that extremely informative, both of the state of the schools as they are and of the plan and the financial situation, both as the district is now and of the plan that they have put forward and of the way the state financing is set up. And it made it really clear to me why they have it set up the way they do and why they want to proceed in this specific time frame. So particularly with the money from the state sales tax fund, So I have friends who are teachers in the Amherst school system, and I'm aware that that town recently voted down the project that they had submitted to this fund for rebuilding some of their schools that had lead poisoning in their water. And now that they have voted down that plan, they have years and years to wait before they can make another proposal to get that funding. And so, you know, we've seen that experience, and, you know, I know that we can learn from that, and, you know, and the information is out there. You know, the presentation was very clear, very thorough. There was data, there were diagrams, everything you want to know. I think we as a community have the resources that we need to make that information available, both to the committee members and the general public. And if we need to do that in time for an election, we can do that. And that way we can have both an informed electorate and also to take advantage of an opportunity that really seems important, both for, you know, for building schools that are drastically important for our community, and also doing it in a way that seems cheaper than a lot of the options for doing that. You know, if we were going to do that 5 years from now, 10 years from now. So, you know, if, you know, it seems like a lot of the people who have objections are just saying they don't know. Well, that's easy for us to remedy. So if we could maybe start with that seems like a good way to move forward.
Okay, thank you. Next.
My name is Raul Gutierrez. I live in 78 Bemis Road. I have one child in Metcalf School, and my daughter is going to start next year. I think that the issue that I find is regarding saying we can't pay for it all. I think that's when we start pitting different important services for our community, and it's always education that comes last. And me as an educator, it becomes difficult for me to understand that at all. And I'm not saying anyone in particular, just when you get into Facebook, people get really upset. So, but I think that just to give the kids a chance, they deserve a good education. And I think we moved from Northampton to Holyoke because I work in Holyoke. We fell in love with our house, and we want to support the school system. But if at least give us a chance to vote, and then decide if we either move our kids elsewhere or ourselves, and find that out.
Thank you. On a lighter note, I would tell you, because I'm old, I don't ever see Facebook, so I'm good on that side.
Hi, my name is Mikhail Yurashko. I'm a 58 Tokanika Waitings Farm Road. I've been here, living here for 6 years. I think people talking about schools, about our future, about our kids, that's very important. And you want, like talking about residents, they want to have young families coming to Holyoke. That's important too. We should think about that more, and we should not redo schools, but build new schools for our kids for the future. It's not now, it's future. So keep that in consideration. And I have 2 daughters also. One is 3 and one is 9 months. And I'm thinking about the school too. I'm thinking about the education. Because like everybody was saying, for us to bring more young families here, people to come here, we need schools, we need education where I think it's more important than anything else, than little stuff that we're talking about. So thank you, and I'm a union carpenter. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time.
Greetings, I'm Alex Morris. I live at 11 Linden Street. I I want to be here tonight. Of course, I want to thank all the families and residents who were here tonight. And I also just want to point out that I think all of us care about education in schools in the city. And I don't necessarily mean to say that those against putting this on the ballot are necessarily against the children. I happen to come to the conclusion that putting it on the ballot, I think, is the best conclusion that we can come to if we do care about the future of our city and investments in public education. I also want to point out that we've had a dedicated group of members of the school building committee that have been meeting for over a year, volunteering their time after 5 o'clock during the week, sometimes multiple times a week, that have actually examined a lot of the questions that have been asked here tonight. And we don't expect any resident of the city of Holyoke to have to go to the ballot box not having all of the information that they need to make the decision. We also don't expect to have any city councilor to take the vote to put it on the ballot without making sure that every single one of your questions or concerns is addressed. And I know we have a competent team that stands ready to answer all of your questions. I know when I took office in 2012, we had already begun the conversation with the school committee about potentially renovating some schools in the community, investing in new schools. We had statements of interest into the Mass School Building Authority. The fact of the matter is that Holyoke kids deserve the best facilities like a kid from any community in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. We haven't had a newly constructed building in Holyoke since 1989, which also happens to be the year that I was born. And so, no offense to those that were born earlier than that. And I think we've looked at this process. We've looked at renovation. And I know the order, because it was filed a few months ago, says April 30th, but by no means does that special election date have to be on April 30th. And so I don't want folks to think that we only have a month and a half to run a campaign and educate the public about this. This can happen in May. This can happen in June. I think sometime in June at the latest would help us stay on schedule and make sure there aren't increases to the cost of the project. We're looking at a $130 million project for 2 brand new middle schools in the city that both would have 550 students each. The share of the Mass School Building Authority would be $75 million. And this really is a once-in-a-lifetime, once-in-a-generation opportunity for Holyoke to invest in our schools. It is very unprecedented that the MSBA vote for 2 projects in one city to happen simultaneously. And the administration, working with our partners, Joan Whitsitt, Margaret and her entire team, Pink & Company, worked very hard to convince the MSBA that this was something that the community valued, that we stand ready to make this happen in the city of Holyoke. And folks often, point out the $55 million that would be invested on the city is even less, for 2 brand new middle schools in the city, is even less than the investment that neighboring East Hampden is making in just one school over the mountain. And so to think about how impactful that would be on our students. And then why 2 schools? Why not just 1 school? Well, number one, it's an issue of equity. And so we can't just build one school where only some students in Holyoke would have a fantastic state-of-the-art middle school experience. But we want to build middle schools where every young person, no matter what neighborhood you live in, what family background you come from, have the same opportunity to get a great middle school education. And not just in one neighborhood, but representing the different parts of our community to make sure people have easy access to that. This plan also wasn't made in silos, right? There was a lot of educators and teachers and staff and families, parents that had a lot of input in this process as well. And I think Dr. Dwight will tell you there's a lot of disagreement on a lot of issues in the city of Holyoke, but there was almost one recurring theme that the K-8 model was something a lot of folks wanted to move away from, that we wanted to embrace the middle school model. And we don't have a single square foot of adequate middle school space in any of our facilities right now. And so when we look at Lawrence, when we look at Peck Middle School, we could renovate it. We could make a nominal investment to remove the asbestos and improve the air quality for our students and teachers. But that is entirely different than providing a 21st century state-of-the-art educational spaces, middle school experience for each and every young person in our community. And so those are the conversations that we want to have in our city. I think the people of the city of Holyoke are ready and willing to have that conversation over the next several months. And even if you personally as a city council will vote no, whenever that election is, let the people of the city of Holyoke make their voice heard as to whether or not they want to make that investment. It's a progressive tax, depends on the value of your home. If the residents of Holyoke want to make that investment, not just in their kids' future, but their neighbors' future. And this isn't just about people who have kids, it's about developers, people who've been talking about making investments in their building. It's about business owners. This isn't just an investment for when the schools open in fall of 22. This is an investment that'll be here for generations, impacting our community. So I just want to thank the people that have really rolled up their sleeves over the last year to make this happen. And just again point out that there has been no attempt whatsoever to rush this. We want to have a deliberate conversation with the council. We stand ready to answer any questions over the next several days, weeks, and months. And of course, the residents of the city of Holyoke should not be expected to go to the ballot box without having all of their questions answered as well. But again, let's work on this together, and let's really make a difference in the future of our kids' lives for, again, generations to come. So thank you.
Mr. Mayor, one
Mr.
question.
Mayor, if you can stay just for one more minute. The main question that I'm getting when people are just generally
Yeah.
aware of the issue is, how are we going to pay for it? And how is it going to impact the budget? That is the other side of the equation, and the whole economic development argument and the business tax rate and the homeowners tax rates. Those are the calls I'm getting. My taxes have already gone up. They've doubled in 10 years. Now the CPA tax is on top of it. And now you're talking about adding another tax. Those are the calls I'm getting. They're the nuts and bolts. How am I going to do this on my fixed income?
Yeah.
So we do need to answer those very genuine questions that we're expecting them to be voting on, because we want to keep the people who live here now able to live here too.
Yeah.
And, you know, you have dealt with Cinder a lot, and she told us she couldn't see how we could carry that debt expense being up at the top of our budget. So we need to understand realistically, how can we do that? And I'm not saying here now, but I'm saying that's part of the discussion that we need
Absolutely.
to have.
And we've had those. I mean, Cinder, when she said that, she said the city can't carry the debt without a debt exclusion vote. And so it's very clear that the only way to make these schools happen is to put them on the ballot and let the voters decide whether or not they want to invest in their taxes to make this happen. So we've been very clear about that. And I get those same, I'm the mayor, I get those same phone calls, those same letters. But again, this isn't just about a tax bill in the next few years. This is an investment that will eventually expand the tax base, increase property values, bring more development, more families to our community, which will lift all boats over time.
I hear what you're saying, but the other point that she made was that it was a very high monthly and annual cost to fund the bond, that we need to understand how we're going to carry that in, say, the speculation being that the voters supported it. We need to, as a practical matter, know how that would play out in the budget and affect the other core services of the city. I think that needs to be part of this discussion.
Again,
Thank
I mean,
you.
I was at that same meeting,
Thank you.
and Cinder actually said if she came from a different community, that she actually thought the average tax burden for the average value of a $200,000 home was certainly feasible, supportable, something that she would certainly vote for. And the whole point of a debt exclusion vote is it doesn't add to the city budget, so it doesn't cut into other city services that residents rely on a daily basis. If, for example, we were talking about going through the traditional bonding route, then yes, we'd have to have a more direct conversation about carrying that debt. But doing a debt exclusion override, and the reason we're doing this is because it's literally the only way to move forward with 2 middle schools at this time. And I would encourage folks, we can definitely post a link of the finance meeting that Cinder, who's our financial advisor, came in and with very elaborate, very detailed conversation with members of this council, the finance committee, members of the school committee that talk specifically about the funding mechanism and why this is the most effective way for the city to go. And I know that Cinder at the conclusion of that meeting was pretty transparently, publicly supportive of the route that the city was going down. And I know Councilor McGivern, who's not here tonight, helped chair that meeting.
Yes, but the people who are considering this question need to understand the ramifications for them.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Like I said, every resident should know what they know the
And-
property value,
and-
know the projected tax impact on them, and
As
whatnot.
this sits before us, there is none of that.
We've talked about this many times in committees, and I would point out that
I
we've had.
understand that, but I'm talking
Yeah.
about the general public that is calling all of us.
Absolutely. We want to make sure you have that information, so when you're contacted, that you can then provide that information to folks that are reaching
Well,
out.
that they can get the information.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Once we have an election date, obviously, it's important to get that set so we know how to expend time and resources in the next several weeks and months to be able to move forward and make sure that the public knows how to make an educated decision.
I'm sure the mayor
Thank
is
you.
going to stay to the end, so if we got other questions, we can ask them at the end.
Thank you.
And let's go on to the next presenter. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Hi, my name's Nancy Capron. I live at 72 Congress Avenue, and I'm a substitute teacher in the Chicopee public school system. I am very poor. I have a learning disability and a little bit of brain damage, and substitute teaching was a match for my skill set. And I believe strongly, I'm not drawn to substitute teaching. I just do it because I'm disabled, and this is what I can do. But I also, at the same time, believe we have a moral and ethical responsibility to children. I also believe we have a moral and ethical responsibility to every other person on the planet. I walk my friend's dog around Elmwood. I'm poor. I don't have any stake in this game, no children. And I look at homes where the roofs are not intact and the porches are falling down. And I think before the school issue came up, how are these people going to maintain their homes if their property values rise? These are strangers. These aren't people I know, right? I know that there is a way, I'm friendly with Mayor LaChapelle, and I can't think of the term, but you can build in protections for senior citizens, right? And as far as tax rates, she's told me the name before, but I would encourage that. I would say, you know, if folks vote yes, but before folks vote yes, is that we look at senior citizens and we exclude them from tax increases, and we do something maybe a little more radical. We look at the income for homeowners inside their homes rather than the property value, and base their taxes on their income and their availability. Because I loved what Linda said. Linda wants people who live in Holyoke to stay in Holyoke, and I think that's fair. And I believe that we can be better, that we can do something different, right? I'm not really sure. I'm going to tell you that it doesn't matter where people go to school. That's not what educates kids. I mean, like, that's not the answer. You can tell yourselves that's the answer. And in fact, education doesn't lead you out of poverty. That is also a specious sort of argument that's put forth. That's not real. But if you're going to go this route, let's protect people, vulnerable people, that I don't know, that I have no stake in. But let's do something different. Let the middle class people, the upper middle class people that are moving here from Northampton, take on a greater tax burden, or a greater percent of the burden, because that's fair, right? That's it.
Thank you. Thank you. Next.
Yeah, good evening. Good to be here. Dave Yost from 20 Sydney Avenue. And this seems like a really polarizing issue, but I don't know if it really needs to be. I think we can all agree that the new schools are a worthy project, a worthy end. The question is, does it justify whatever means we use to get there? Now, I've been a strong supporter of the schools all along myself. I had children for the schools. Now my grandchildren are starting. But to echo what was just said as far as the impact on the taxpayer, I mean, for myself, I'm fortunate if the tax rate goes up, I'm fortunate enough to be able to work a few more hours to pay for it, but our citizens on fixed incomes, retirees and so on, how are they going to pay for that? And we're also talking about how we can all agree that the city needs new growth, but we can say, will the new schools in themselves bring people in? But will that be counteracted by, is this going to bring us out of the receivership? I think that's the first thing people see when they look at our schools here. And also the higher tax rate as far as a commercial rate. Is that going to keep people away? Will that counteract the benefit of this? And I think also, if we're looking to do this in the most cost-effective way, if that's really been looked at, one thing I thought of today, to try and get that reimbursement rate closer to the 80% than this 58% is now. We'd have to get the square footage cost down. Maybe one thing, instead of taking on the extra cost of demolishing PEC, we could look for an empty, a vacant lot to build a school on. And I think, lastly, I wonder if we're, speaking of the city generally, if we're actually looking at the overall budget and trying to look for ways to cut costs, or we're just going right to let's just raise taxes, because I think it was back in August, Councilor Bartley put out the proposal that we got an open checkbook, like all of our surrounding communities have, and that's in the administration's court, but nothing come of that. So I'd like to see the effort made to try and get more efficiency in the city overall before we're asked for another tax increase. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Next.
I'm Michael Thomas Siciliano. I live at 283 Linden Street in Holyoke. I just want to take a brief moment to publicly acknowledge and thank our new City Council President, Todd McGee. I haven't had that opportunity yet publicly. Congratulations on your appointment. It was a prudent and wise reflection of this City Council that I've been defending for 20 years, just for everybody to know. I'm here tonight with concerns about the current proposal to drastically raise taxes here in the city of Holyoke. I am concerned about the hundreds, maybe even thousands of homeowners in our city that are on fixed incomes. As we know, Holyoke is a working class city, and there are many thousands of people in this city that live paycheck to paycheck. I am here to support them. Indeed, I, more than just as much as almost anybody in this room, support our public schools. And I actually want 2 new middle schools. However, the taxpayers of our city are already over-leveraged. In my opinion...
Can I hold you up for 1 second? Could I ask the people in the hallway to keep the conversation down? Because you're making it hard to focus on the person speaking here. Much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. I believe that the taxpayers of the city of Holyoke are already over-leveraged. There's a lot of pressure currently on the taxpayers in this city. They're asked to shoulder the burden of a significant increase in taxes, and the homeowners of this city are in essence outnumbered. For instance, I believe that the tax-paying entities in the city of Holyoke, I believe, are about 7,000, and that yet we have almost 20,000 voters in this city. And there seems like an unfair advantage, because I want to try to keep this focused. This vote, you folks are considering whether to put this on the ballot. There's almost 20,000 voters in this city, but yet less than 7,000 actually are homeowners that pay taxes. This seems like an unfair burden on the taxpayers of our city. And I ask that the City Council exercise very careful prudence, allowing this to go forward. Recently, when the city was, the city went through state review and certified less than $300,000 in free cash. And the state of Massachusetts pointed out that the city of Holyoke is in error in many ways. There's many significant improvements that need to happen in regards to economic efficiency improvements. And I publicly have challenged our mayor and Dr. Stevens-Reich to propose and implement at least some efficiency improvements, and that if they propose some economic efficiency improvements for our city, that I very well will vote yes for 2 new middle schools. In closing, I want to say that the city of Holyoke is not financially stable. I believe that our police department is underfunded. It's a fact that the fire department has been reduced in operational equipment size. It's a fact that the SOAR rate is going up in our city, and that that we need to be very careful when leveraging the equity of the taxpayers of this city anymore. So please exercise some jurisprudence.
Thank you. Next.
Good evening, Jason Garan, 150 Mountain View Drive, Holyoke. I come before you tonight in a different capacity. I'm the business manager of the Carpenters Union. I represent over 1,000 working people and their families throughout Western Massachusetts. And so I stand here as an expert in construction and doing this for 30 years, 24 years in the office of the Carpenters Hall. I can tell you that I have seen a lot of different trends. I've seen changes in the construction industry. I've seen highs and lows that I think this City Council should take very seriously. And so I just want to share a couple of them. One is in 2010, the Mass School Building Authority changed. And when they changed, the ratio of how much they were returning to a city for a project changed as well. It dropped significantly. If you went to the event 2 weeks ago, Jones, Winsett, Architects, Pink, a joint committee with the City Council and the School Building Committee, there was an incredibly detailed delivery on what this project is, how much it cost, and how it's going to impact us, the community. And I would ask that anybody who hasn't seen that information, the people are here tonight, and let them share it with you, because a lot of the questions that are being asked have already been answered multiple times. And I think that it would be to everybody's, I think, intelligence just to take some time and go over what's already been shared and beat up. But I'm going to say this from the sense of construction today, that we slowed down in August of 2018. That slowdown is continuing today. The slowdown reflects in the prices that are being given on projects in Western Massachusetts. That will not continue. There are currently 3 other projects in the queue, school projects. One in Ludlow is going to be bidding this summer. Prints are going to go out sometime in the spring. East Hampton, as somebody just brought up, is coming out. That's a $100 million school. West Springfield is coming out. The contractors who bid on these schools are sophisticated. They do not just bid in Western Massachusetts, but they bid all over the state. And when they do so, the market out there in the rest of the state is hot. You go to Boston, it is on fire. You go to Worcester County, it's busier than here. But you got a price from a contractor who gave you it based on the market conditions. And I would say to you a couple things. One, you're probably not going to see these prices again. If you decide not to do these schools, the ramification is that when this comes back up, and that is a question that I think Pink, the Mass School Building Authority, can tell you, but if you go to Amherst and ask them how Wildwood went, when that was voted down by the community under a Proposition 2.5, that was 8-10 years ago. That project is still not on even their radar. And it's because of all the projects that go out there, on 100 projects per year, being asked for some type of return, I can tell you that maybe it's 8 or 10 that actually get funded. So you have a unique situation. You have 2 schools that the School Building Authority said, we will help you fund at a fund ratio that has, in almost any other community, would be envious. They'd be like, I'll jump on it right now. Nobody's getting these numbers. And if we don't pass this, because there's a lot of points that are being made about, the level of income, this is a working class city. Absolutely, those are great points. But the fact is, if we need schools, which we do, and we say that that's not going to happen, there are ramifications deeper into the future than people may really realize. And so I thank you for letting me speak on this tonight.
Thank you.
And I would hope that you just allow this to go to a ballot and let the community make their decision in the ballot box.
Thank you. Next.
Good evening. I'm Linda Pratt, 42 Belvedere. I am one of those senior citizens on a fixed income. I think this is an extremely important matter. I sincerely hope that you will send it to the voters, that the council will approve letting the voters have a say. I did attend the meeting at Dean, and before the meeting, I had a lot of questions. I wasn't sure what was going on with this whole proposal. I found that that meeting answered many of my questions, and as several other people have said, I would encourage you, if you haven't seen all the information, to please read through that, speak with the folks who've been involved with this, because it does answer many of the questions. So I'm just speaking in support of the proposal for the two new schools. I currently rent. If my rent goes up, I will find a way to pay that. I would like to buy in Holyoke. The idea of taxes going up is not stopping me from considering that either, so thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Kevin Jourdain. I reside at 18 Raymond Avenue here in Holyoke. Lived in Holyoke my entire life. In fact, the first members of my family came to Holyoke in the 1870s. It's the most wonderful community. I wouldn't think of living elsewhere. I just want to make a number of points. First of all, I'm going to go to the point of, one, we should not have a ballot question on this. One, because it doesn't require a ballot question. Number two is that if we're going to have a ballot question, it should be one, Mr. Chairman, just as you alluded to, which should be on a general election ballot. Number two, it should be a transparent question, one that says, this is what it's going to cost. And when we say things, you look at the wording of the question, it's so inherently devious to the point of saying, oh, this is a temporary thing, and when we pay it up, well, how long is that? We already know it's 30 years. The question should say that. It's a mathematical fact. It should say that they're asking to raise $55 million and that this is going to be amortized over 30 years. These aren't questions of opinion. These are questions of mathematical fact. I believe I've provided to the counselors what the ballot question as some of the obvious suggestions. These aren't points that are not in dispute. These are just mathematical facts. What's the interest rate? At least approximately. It's going to be 30-year bond, and I've already done out the math. That's going to cost $95.3 million. That's the facts. $95.3 million. And the question is, can this community afford it? I'm also reminded of sort of feeling like a salesman when you go onto a car lot and all they do is, oh, let's test drive the car and let's ride around town and show you all the features. And isn't this a wonderful car? And then you try to get to the conversation about, well, what does it cost? Because that's all wonderful. We'd all love to own a new car. We'd all love to have everything new. Towers to the heavens for schools that look like shopping malls. I would submit to you the jury is definitely out on whether that makes a difference versus a rehab school, for example. The difference in achievement and cost and all of these type of questions. That is all subjects of opinion. There's experts on both sides of the issue which says this affects the economics of the community. This, in fact, affects scholastic achievement. Nobody has an absolute answer to that because there isn't. And I've looked at for studies on all sides of that issue. The point is, let me give you some additional facts. The fact of the matter is to support this and to put it on the ballot is going to be extremely divisive. Divisive where you're going to have people who are going to say, you don't love children if you're not in favor of this. That's where this is going to go. Not because, and of course I laugh because I have 3 children in the Holyoke Public Schools. That's 3 more than the mayor has. But I don't question, he's on the other side of this issue than 180 degrees and from where I am, and I'm sure he loves kids just as much as I do. But that's where this is going to go because this is the way these conversations get framed. It's why this is so divisive and unnecessarily divisive. When these things, we've always funded our school improvements through this chamber, through bonding, through these mechanisms. For example, I would suggest to you that we should rehab Lawrence School, and if necessary, we need to consider and do additional analysis and due diligence in this room regarding the rehab of Peck School and/or the reuse of other buildings that we have that are currently under use, such as Dean, okay, which are about 1/3 of what the capacity is when we spent $38 million to build it. That was alluded to about 1989. The other point I'd like to make is we've had great success with renovation. At Holyoke High School, we renovated that to the tune of about $20 million. Holyoke High School looks fantastic. We didn't make the mistake that Chicopee made, spent over $100 million. Couple of different points. If you're going to make a financial decision, you got to look at all the ramifications of the financial decision. This goes well beyond the cost to the residents of anywhere between $250 to $350 at the average cost, okay? And of course, we know about averages. 50% of the people are above that. So we're talking about, could be $400, $500, $600 to a lot of residents. To the business community, this is going to be a devastating increase. A $2.76 increase in the CIP will result in a $608,000 annual increase to the Holyoke Mall's budget. Are you Are you kidding me? Here is an institution which, is anybody investing in retail stock these days? We see JCPenney's hanging on by a thread. We see Sears has already closed. Numerous other stores are closing the mall. They're doing what they can to try and morph the building into other things for entertainment and whatnot. But can anyone here guarantee 5 years from now, 10 years from now, that the Holyoke Mall is going to even be open? And oh, by the way, the impact to that is everybody else in the city is going to have to pick up their $608,000 because this is a mortgage. Once you agree to this, there's no, oh, I'm sorry, we don't have the money. You pay. And we better have somebody to pay. And the next point is, if
Kevin,
this,
I'm going to ask you to wrap up in the next 30 seconds. So.
If this tipping point gets them to a point where now we lose the $8 million that they're already paying us, who's going to pick up this $8.6 million? The fact of the matter is, this is an absurd proposal. It is ridiculous that we have gotten to this point. It should not be one of these. You have to put this to the ballot to fund this. Councilor Sullivan deserves a lot of credit for looking at government reforms and other ways if we did go down the new building route. The fact of the matter is we've already doubled the tax levy in the last 15 years. We went up 1.6 million this year. It's forecasted to go up another 1.6 each of the next 2 years. There is sufficient funds, if you even wanted to do a new building, to go ahead and do it with due diligence in this room or to rehab. A tax override is a preposterous idea, and it's going to hurt this community and tax it really beyond a tipping point. And, oh, by the way, waste $81 million versus a rehab proposal. So we've got to put all of those on the table and put those forward to the SBA. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next.
Rory Casey, 284 High Street. I love you, Kevin. But I do have to say a few things. Full disclosure, I am a member of the school building committee, which has been seated for at least the past 24 months. I mean, even before this project, there were other projects that we were dealing with. But we have been meeting regularly. And I have to say, I'm no longer an employee of the city. But as somebody who's been involved in city process for a number of years, this is the most transparent process I've ever been involved in. And that's not to criticize any other city entity. I really have to credit Margaret, Dory, and their groups for ensuring that this is a transparent process. I would challenge any counselor in this room, and I have great admiration and respect for every single person sitting on this side of the rail, folks sitting on the other side. Try to find the subcommittee minutes for any one of these, any one of your subcommittees, school committees, subcommittees, for the Conservation Commission, for the Planning Board. I would love for them all to be online and fully accessible. Every single meeting, every single document that's been produced as part of this process is open and available to anyone who wants to see it. There are a number of people here who have already spoken about that. They're all over Facebook. I discount Facebook. I just think that's an echo chamber and I don't pay too much attention to it. But the reality is that if you want to know what's gone on to come to this decision about 2 schools rather than 1, a debt exclusion rather than traditional bonding or some other process, it's all there and readily available. And this group that I'm part of is one of the most diverse groups that I have ever sat on as a public body. We have elected officials, we have city staff, we have community members. One of the most diverse and engaged groups I've ever been a part of. So I just wanted to start off by saying that, okay? That the information that folks, and I realize, you know, and I'm a father of 2. I have a full-time job and many other things, other commitments, like so many folks here, especially the city councilors. You can't always pay attention to everything that's going on. You can't attend every meeting. But if you want to do the research, if you really want to know what's brought the city and this administration to come to this decision, it's there and readily available. Okay? So, a few things about how we've gotten here. And Mike, I really love that you've been part of this process, right? So let's talk about renovation for a second. Let's talk about it. You look at the 2 buildings that we're talking about, okay? Peck School. Sure, it's one of the newer schools in our portfolio. It is one of the worst designed schools in the entire district, okay? We have had a number of outside objective agencies come out and take a look at this, and they're telling us time and time again, there is nothing you can do to make this school adequate for the middle school experience. And there are people who don't agree with the debt exclusion vote who agree with that. So let's start there. Let's start where we agree. That Peck cannot be transformed. You cannot renovate it. We've done the analysis. If you wanted to renovate Peck just to abate, just to make it a safe environment for the teachers and the students, would it be less than building a new middle school on that same site? Sure. Would it change the educational experience for the students that go there? Absolutely not. And a lot of folks are concerned about 60% versus 80%. The reality is that MSBA has an even lower cap when you talk about renovating schools without renovating the square footage that affects the educational experience. So numbers that have been thrown out were accurate at a national level 5 years ago, but when you look at regional numbers and you look at what the MSBA has, and we'd be happy to share this information with the committee, with the council, there is a huge difference between the idea that we could renovate a school like Peck or a school like Lawrence and still provide the educational experience that our middle school students deserve in the 21st century.
Rory, I'm going to ask you to wrap up.
I will. I absolutely will. Thank you, Chair. So what I'm asking for is very simple. Very simple. We cannot absorb the $3.5 million in the city budget the way it is right now. What hasn't been talked about tonight, and if folks look at the Finance Committee, meeting that happened months ago where our finance advisor came in and talked about how she was going to work with the city to structure the way this debt would be absorbed by the taxpayers. If we were to hold a vote this year, and MSBA would like for us to have this before July 10th, whatever date the committee decides or the council decides, that increase wouldn't be realized for years down the road. Okay? The reforms that former Councilor Jourdain and others have talked about are already in the works. Other developments are already in the works. There is the real possibility that by the time this tax increase would be realized, that other reductions in the levy, the city budget, would be realized to offset that. We can't talk about it right now. I know we got to wrap it up. But all I'm saying is this, that the only way for this project to happen right now, and if we delay this, it's going to increase the cost by millions of dollars. If we went back to the MSBA and said, let's do ad reno rather than new build, we'd be looking at a delay of years. That's what MSBA has told us, that we would have to start the process over, that the $1 million we've already invested would be wasted, essentially.
Okay. Right.
That we need to realistically look at the information that's already out there, and we need to take action now. We cannot wait. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, please.
I'm not that tall. Or could I just speak into it like that?
You're good.
All right. So I got to do this quick because I got to pick up my stepdaughter who just finished her rehearsal for the play that's coming up at the high school.
Name is it?
My name is Israel Rivera. I reside 1295 Dwight Street, Holyoke, Mass, apartment 2R. Grew up in the flats, went to McMahon School. It was awesome. Went to Magnet Middle School, which no longer exists, which was one of the awesomest schools, I believe. Then I went to Holyoke High, right? So long story short, in my experience of going to school in Holyoke Public Schools, I have to say that it wasn't always the best, right? There are times where some of it is my fault. So there are times where some of it was the system's fault. And then there are times where sometimes it could have been my mom's fault for lack thereof knowing what's happening in the community because she came from Gary, Indiana by herself when I was like 2 or 3. But navigating the systems in the city of Holyoke is not easy for a kid who is not growing up in the environment with all the extra know-how and the navigation of this big city, I would say. So I had to do this on my own. As a kid growing up, just doing experiences, getting in trouble, doing things I should have never did, and then I ended up, whatever. I come back, I go to Holyoke Community College, which makes me feel more complete, right? After I graduate Holyoke Community College, I then go on to UMass, right? The feeling at UMass is not the same feeling at Holyoke Community College because you're on a whole nother campus, you're in a whole nother realm, everybody just like, they're ready to go to school. And not to say that at HEC that's not the case, but it's a different level of education, a different level of expectation. I would assume that would be the same when you bring something new into a community that is not used to having something that new. So me using this as a reference, I feel like a lot of the kids that are going through what they're going through right now is because they feel like no one cares, right? When you feel like no one cares, you don't care. I don't care, because that's how I felt for a while, until I start feeling like other people cared. Through my process growing up, there were certain people that did show me they cared. I had baseball coaches. I had ex-bosses like Mike Sullivan as well. Not, you know what I'm saying? Not to throw names out, but Terry was also my baseball coach. But so there's two different dynamics here for a kid growing up, but 2 awesome mentors that helped me out in different situations. I came out of prison, he helped me out. Before I went to prison, he was helping me out. Different context, right?
I should have helped you more.
No. You did. You told me to go to Dean, and I didn't listen to you. I should have went to Dean. Anyways, at the end of the day, where it comes down to it, though, is these mentors, I didn't have these in school. These were people that I had outside the school. These new schools, they're supposed to build community where people outside the schools can be in the schools as well. People that have access to, if we get a brand new gym facility, everybody's crying about, let's have some new sports facilities in Holyoke. Well, this is gonna be 2 brand new schools that are possibly gonna have 2 brand new gyms. That is a step forward in that direction. I'm also gonna be a first-time home buyer soon. I'm going to buy in Holyoke, regardless of how much it costs. I don't care what anybody says. Taxes, raise them, I don't care. I lived in Holyoke my whole life, and I'll pay whatever it is. I'm sorry, because I love Holyoke, and I want my kids to go to a good school and a public institution. Most of the kids that I met in high school that didn't go to public schools went to Catholic schools. Then all of a sudden go to Holyoke High their last 4 years. Come on, seriously? Anyways, I have to pick up my stepdaughter. I just wanted to say, please put it on the ballot so that the people can actually vote for it, because that is true democracy, not people in these rooms making the actual decision. Thank you. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Your sweating is real.
Next, please.
My name is Glenn Shealy. I live at 48 Woods Way in the city. I'm a commercial real estate developer in the city. I think I'll be relatively affected on the downside by a tax increase. But I think if this city does not buy into the 2 new schools, you're making the biggest mistake of probably 2 generations. Schools are the #1 economic catalyst for any city in America. Despite Mr. Jourdain's reference to studies going one way or the other, if you read the literature on new schools and how they attract, whether you're in Cambridge, Newton, Wellesley, Holyoke, Ludlow, wherever you are, new schools bring in young families. Young families bring in kids. They bring their kids because they want them to go to good schools. Without good schools, this city is losing its population. I have hired, probably in the 10 years I've been here, over 65 young kids to work on my development. I constantly see them loving Holyoke, but when they get to a certain age and they make a certain pay level, they leave Holyoke because their partner says, I don't want my kids going to Holyoke schools. We're losing the youth in the city. I can understand the burden it puts on senior citizens, many of whom are on fixed incomes, and perhaps that can be adjusted for. But new schools are an economic generator. I've been in the city for 10 years, and I've listened to the political debates. I hear all this stuff about how we're doing so well economically, and I look for it myself. I don't see it. 2 new schools are going to be the engine for economic development in this city. I know I'll pay more. I'm happy to do it. And I know there are a lot of young families that would come back into the city, buy homes, work alongside senior citizens, alleviate the burden on them, and I hope you can vote for it. So with that, I'll cut it short. I do not use Facebook, so you don't have to worry about it.
You would have only said good things about me anyway. Not that I would have found out, but.
Hello, my name is Abigail Morales. I live at 322 Pine Street, and I come forth today not as someone who knows politics or someone who has statistics, but just real life experience. So I have a 17-year-old who will soon be graduating from PVPA, and it saddens me that I didn't have faith in the educational system here in the city that we reside in, because she's a special gifted smart child, and I didn't want her to fall through the cracks as many others have had in the city. So I plead for you to think about the families, how many make that same choice and choose charter schools over public schools or school of choice to move out of the city. So I also have a 5-year-old who goes to Metcalf, who's having a wonderful experience in the dual language program. And that just regenerized my love for education in Holyoke. And we're going towards a good path. And no one's mentioned it here today, but there are students in Metcalf that are in 3rd grade and they're in 4th grade, and they're thinking about what's gonna happen once they get to the middle school level. So we started this great program, dual language, and it's going well. And then what? What's the future? Where are these students who are doing so well and have the data behind it of how well they're doing? What's going to happen to them? So then we got this great idea of 2 new schools. So again, that same energy that's happening with all the new work with the dual language can continue on with 2 new schools. And there's also a dual language program in Ian White, as you know, that's also doing exceptional. So this gives hope and light to these parents, because I was already thinking, what am I going to do after she ages out of Metcalf? What's the next step? So this option provides that next step. And although I'm not here to convince the vote one way or another, I'm just here in hopes that it gets to the ballot, because it should be decided by the people of the city. And I've heard great points on both sides, but one point that actually hurts is that the belief that only the people who own properties should have a say, because that's who it's going to affect. Nothing happens in isolation. Every action has a reaction, and everybody will be affected. It's about what you want to invest and what outcome you would want. So everything comes at a cost, but this is something that's worth it. It's going to re-energize families to stay here and have something to look forward to with the great things that have already started in the city. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next.
Hello, so my name is Erin Fontaine-Brunel. I live at 1 Woodland Street. I am privileged enough to represent the school committee as a member at large on the, to represent the citizens in Holyoke. But I also have a different perspective. I'm a realtor. So I deal with this question of what draws you to a community, right? Taxes, services, what goes on around. As I meet with new clients and I drive them around, almost not every, but majority of our surrounding communities have beautiful, glaring new structures to educate their students. There's something to be said for that. When you drive around a community, you see pride in that. You see that the community cares about its education. Education is constantly put last. It's put last nationally. Yeah, Massachusetts, sure, we rank top in education, but look at the trouble we're having just trying to get the foundation budget review passed. Our kids, our school systems are constantly underfunded. But taking that point aside, back to the realtor note. You know what the average home sale price is in East Hampton? Do you know how expensive it is to buy a house in East Hampton? I have buyers that have been looking for 8 months, getting outbid on houses for $350,000 within walking distance to their new school. The restaurants, the shops, the industry, all of that. People look at that stuff, and schools are very important. So sure, our tax rate might go up, but in comparison, our assessed values, come on, folks. Our taxes are very low compared to our surrounding communities. Our average home sale last year on properties that have sold through the MLS, that's what I look at, not private sales, was about $220,000. Sure, we have some homes that are $400,000. Sure, we have some that are $5,000. But let's not get crazy and try to say that 50% of the population is going to have some extremely high tax burden when we have row houses that are still assessed at $60,000, okay? We talk about a commercial tax rate. Sure, it's high, but look at the assessed values, folks. Our assessed values on our commercial property are pennies to the dollar of our surrounding communities. So sure, the rate is high, but when you look at the dollar amount, it's not high. I own a property on High Street and I own a home in this community. My tax rate is not, sure, the rate may be high, dollar for dollar, but my actual tax burden is not that significant. $3,600 a year for a 6,000 square foot commercial property in prime downtown? Come on, let's look at the other factors here. And yes, we talk about gentrifying a community and whatnot, but the average reoccurring value we're seeing in Holyoke is 2%. Our surrounding communities are increasing by 3, 4, 5, 7% annually. We're not seeing that rate of growth here because mainly people don't want to move here because they have kids that they don't want in our school system. And those that do live here, they don't send their kids to our school system. This is a huge concern. We must value the education of our children. Never mind my children, your grandchildren, your neighbor's child. They deserve to have the education that their peers and surrounding community has. So, one other point I'd like to address, though I know we can't address comments specifically. Are we going to segregate our schools? Are you joking me? The information is out there. We have spent time. I don't see any of you people attending school committee meetings. I'm sorry, but we are open to the public once a month. Where are you? Where were you at Dean? We have been planning these projects for years. 2 years it's been since we've been trying to get these funds, okay? We have academies. We have a pathway for every student. No matter what section of the city you live in, no matter what income you come from, you want to major in theater, here's your pathway. That's going to depend on what building you go to, okay? Our dual language program is thriving. We expanded it into Ian White because the community called for it, right? What's going to happen? What's going to happen next year when my daughter's in 5th grade and Metcalf is busting at the seams? Temporary buildings, you know how expensive those are? Using Blessed Sacrament? Come on, really? We have buildings, we need new ones, okay? Renovating Lawrence, renovating Peck, the numbers are out there. The proof is there. You wanna do the research, it's there. We can present it to you, the video, I mean, everything is out there for you folks to get this research. We have been doing it for far too long for anybody to sit here and say we're rushing the process. That's not true. Sure, an April 10th vote sounds really fast, but this has been ongoing for years now. Years. So at the very least, put this on the ballot, let the voters have a say, and I don't want to hear anything about only homeowners are going to feel the burden. A landlord that owns a property that sees a tax increase, that burden's going to fall back on the renter. So that renter's voice is just as important. If they register to vote and they take their energy to get to that ballot box, don't tell me that their voice is somehow lesser value. You know, I get really upset when I've ever watched meetings here and you guys want to know if somebody's a homeowner. It's irrelevant. You want better shops, you want more economic development, property values increasing will bring us that. Property values are not going to increase if we're not a community that people want to move to. Educate our youth. Put it on the ballot.
Okay, thank you. Next.
I came in the short size. Good evening, I'm Helene Florio, 31 Wellesley Road, and I also represent the Holyoke Taxpayers Association. I think that Charter and Rules has one of the most important decisions to make that you've ever faced since you've been developed, since you've been in existence here, with if you approve this ballot that just says yes or no, and taking this question out of committee, taking it into the City Council, and putting it on the ballot anytime this spring, that's minimally an expense that I haven't heard mentioned here tonight of in excess of $50,000 when we're talking the problems of finances here within this community. I want you to understand, please, that I'm not speaking in opposition to Holyoke taking a serious look at the schools that we now have for our children. I totally agree that great education is really important for any of the students, for all of the students, and for any city. I also want to say that I think that Dr. Zweig has done a great job in identifying the inadequacies of the system and the infrastructure, and I'm not opposed to improvement. I am, however, extremely mindful of how the proposal as presented to the voters at this point will be paid for. And I disagree with people that say that the taxes don't matter. I feel it's time to slow down and let the whole community know who, what, when, and how will this be paid for. Is there a possibility of an option? Is there a possibility of a choice that the voters can make that will not hurtfully tax our residences and our businesses? Is there a possibility that's sensitive to all the additional taxes that have been imposed on our ratepayers over the last year that will not ultimately drive out those who have stuck with Holyoke through some tough times? Do people understand how long this override will be in effect? I think there are other avenues. I have to say, I am particularly offended by the comparison that I'm not sure if it was the school committee, if it was the mayor's office, or how this all came, if it came out of OPED, how it all came together. But I'm offended of the comparison of Holyoke, which is a gateway city, to Burlington, Mass., a Boston bedroom community, which reported that the override would not have any effect on ratepayers. The comparison is adamantly wrong. Not only does Holyoke need to attract new businesses and residents to our community, we need to work very hard to keep the ones we have. Currently, we have a commercial tax rate with all of the additions in it, and I'm not going to list them all. I think you all know, are aware of them. Some of them aren't out there for people to see all the time, like the EMAC, the health insurance for Mass Health. And if you have any part-time employees, you're getting zapped another $750 per employee if they don't take your health insurance. Some of these things add up. We have one person on our board who's paying an additional $17,000 a year just to take care of that little itch that came across this year unexpectedly. All here is not rosy. Has the city government evaluated current governance and budgeting? And I think this is really important. Governance and budgeting processes to make substantive changes so the proposal can be enacted within our budget without increasing our taxes. There are many questions out there to you, our elected officials, and you must really, I appreciate tonight, I think you're starting to ask them. I have attended as many of these informational sessions as possible, and that, yes, there's a lot of information, but all of the information has been actually just the proposal for the 2 new schools. There has not been a lot of information as to what the effect was going to be on the rest of the community. Again, I'm not speaking to you opposed to education of our children. I want them in buildings that are safe, attractive, and workable. In fact, I support it. I am, however, asking at this point in time that you do not rush to judgment. It's really extremely important that this question be carefully worked out. As elected officials, you have the responsibility for the future of Holyoke in your hands. You've already been elected. Now is the time to make sure you don't price the constituency out of existence. And I want to just add in, I don't have all of the figures in front of me, but I have a lot of the names of them. We have a tremendous amount of indebtedness in this community that is not on the books yet. The projects haven't been finished. And these totals haven't been added in to what is the city is going to ultimately have to pay. We know what they are. But we have, I see Chief Pond is here, we have all of the new things for the fire department, the new, not that we didn't need the equipment, but we have those. The radio system that came into play that helped put the emergency organizations in touch with each other, that still is not out there bonded for yet. We do have all of the renovations at the high school and in other schools that have made them the nice buildings that they are. Those figures, that's not done. The furnaces, the boilers, the windows, that bonding is not done. I'll wrap it up. There's a lot more of those, though, that you need to consider when you're making your decision.
Thank you.
Your votes are important. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hi again, Laura Clampett, 182 Locust Street. I'll try to keep this brief, but I think a sense of place is really important. You know, I think there have been studies done about the impact of buildings on students' learning, and you know, I know for myself that was the reason I moved to Holyoke, was how I felt when I walked into my house. You know, the sense of beauty that the beautiful old house brings. And, you know, I think the same could be said for these schools and the impact that it will show for our children when they see the community investing in them. The previous owners of my house, a few transactions back, you know, let me know that the reason why they sold the house and moved away from Holyoke was the schools. Unfortunately, they love the community, but they didn't feel like it was a good fit for their children, didn't feel like it was the education their children needed, and moved to Northampton after that. So, you know, I think investing in our schools is important. I attended the meeting at Dean, and I thought that was a very comprehensive overview of why we need 2 schools, why now, why this funding mechanism. I will say the one question that remains unanswered for me is part of the reasoning why this was a good economic decision was that this would allow us to consolidate our elementary schools into fewer buildings to reduce the number of schools that we have in our city, in our portfolio. This is a concern for me as someone who loves buildings, and you know, particularly Metcalf, which is a thriving school. I think that would be a mistake to disrupt, you know, students in schools that are doing well, and to have them move to another building. I don't think newer is always better. I think having redone facilities and things like that are beneficial, but you know, if there's a school that's working, I don't know if moving them is necessarily the better option. So that's one thing that I would like to see in more detail. You know, what is the plan for buildings that are going to become vacant after the consolidation, and what that means for, you know, both the buildings and for the students, how they'll be integrated into the building that they're moving into. So once again, you know, I think this investment is really important for our city, and I think there's been a lot of great work done already, but I do think there is a little bit more fleshing out of the plan that's needed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Deborah Aloisi. I live at 147 Sycamore Street, and thank you for holding this. And thank you, Kevin, because there's a lot of information that I didn't get before from the documents. I always want to know when I'm going into a purchase what I'm buying, how much it's going to cost, and how much it's going to cost me over the years so I know I can pay it off. That's a responsible consumer. That's what I do. I try to manage my money well. Not that I have a lot of it. The reality is there's a lot of people here that don't have a lot of it, and we have a lot of competing interests. Am I 100% sure this is the magic bullet for our community? I'm not. There are a lot of problems, social problems. I'm a social worker, and I'd love to work my way out of my job as a substance abuse clinician. I'm not sure that this is going to do it. So, yes, I'm reading the documents, and I love Facebook. I get lots of information through Facebook. But I don't get all of the information. And I want all of the information. And I feel that having a vote a month from now is too soon. So, thank you.
Thank you. Next, please.
Good evening. I'm Dennis Burks, 18 West Glen Street. On the school committee, and I'm also a school teacher. I've been teaching special education for about 20 years now, and understand the importance of an appropriate environment for school children. So there's 2 things, there's 2 questions that were on there. One question was why we're here tonight, why debt exclusion. The other question was, and why these school buildings, and why do we need them now? Debt exclusion is easy. We need that, and that's separate from the city budget. And we've done a great job of saving money, but you can only save so much without enough revenue coming in before time your expenses catch up to you. So we're going to need this debt exclusion in order to pay for these new school buildings. Why do we need 2 buildings? One, we need equity for all the children in our school system. 2 buildings because 1 building will be too big and unmanageable to have 1,100 students. So we need 2 so that we can split those students up in different parts of the community as well. We've done feasibility studies also. The feasibility studies have been going on for a couple of years now. So we understand that Peck is in no shape to keep going as a middle school. We understand that Lawrence also is in no shape to keep as a middle school. There's also numbers out there that tell that just renovating those 2 schools will be more expensive than building 2 schools. What's been happening lately in this community for the past couple of years is we've had a lot more community involvement. So this isn't new. And for the past few years, there's been meetings around the city about what we need as a district. And a majority of the people, an overwhelming majority of the people, said that we need middle schools. Our middle school students need a different experience than being in an elementary school. These 2 new buildings are going to provide the space that they need in order to get a good education, a better education than they're getting now. I think right now what happened with this middle school project is that it's opened our eyes to where we are as a city. It's opened our eyes to what this city needs in order to better ourselves. I think, and now it's a turning point for us. I think that the school committee is working well in making sure that we get the word out to people. There's a lot of information out there for people about these new buildings. The other thing is that we know what we need to do to bring in revenue. And there are studies that say that when people look to move to a city or to stay in a city, the schools are a huge factor in whether people come into the city and stay in the city. It also brings in business because if people are moving there, then there's going to be people there to spend money at those businesses. The community being involved in this middle school project was huge in us moving forward. So so having the community input was major in what we were doing. And I will also say that many of the people that were coming to these meetings for a long time have expressed the need for these schools. So I'm glad that we're moving forward. And I would ask you to please, and the whole purpose of this meeting tonight was to talk about the debt exclusion, and I would ask you to please move this forward to the full city council, even without a recommendation, because we want to stay on the timeline so that those 2 middle schools can be built at least by the end of 2022 so that we can start fresh with those 2 middle school buildings being there for the students. For a long time, and our students deserve right now nothing but the best. For a long time, they have been portrayed poorly in the media. And lately, and for the first time, we have gotten some good press in the media about what the schools are doing and talking about the graduation rates moving up and things like that. So people are now starting to look at our city and say they're really doing something. These 2 new middle schools, if you put it on the ballot and let the people speak and talk about it and decide for ourselves if we do these 2 new middle schools, then that will be even better for us as a community. I know that we have a great community, we have great people. There was a fire a couple of years ago on the first day of the year, of the new year, and what happened? everybody, many people from every single ward went down to help out. And there was a school building that opened up and allowed a place for shelter for people to come into. And people brought clothes and blankets and food and water for all of those people. So we're invested in each other. They went down, every single ward understood it. If you've never been in the fire, if you've never lost a person or never had that experience, even though you don't feel it, we understood. And this is the same thing. And I'm looking for people to look at this as an investment in our city. And it will, in the long run, it'll pay off. We were in a similar situation before, and we didn't invest in the schools, and we got nothing out of it. Now in this situation, I think that we can learn from past mistakes, at least put this on the ballot. I think that there are people who do want to see the city do better. And these two schools are going to be better for the city as a whole, as it brings in business and it does much better, and it gives our students a much better educational experience. So the spirit of the city, I think that even coming to this weekend, which is huge, and we celebrate Holyoke, we celebrate ourselves. There's a lot of spirit. You talk to anyone who lives in Holyoke and they ask you, why do you like Holyoke? We always say, it's the people. And I definitely believe in the people, and I know that we're going to do the right thing. You'll do the right thing by putting this in front of the city council and letting this question go on the ballot. The other thing I would say is that there has been some growth, not a lot, but there has been some growth in the city. And I would say that as we look at ourselves and as we're at this turning point and we look at how we're moving ahead and how we're bringing other businesses in, I would look at places like the Cubit building, which has partnered with HCC. And having some educational service in there as far as the culinary arts. I would look at the computing center that's based on education also. I'll look at the Pignelli building. There's adult education in there, childcare as well. And I would look at the library also, which is one of the most beautiful buildings I've seen. I like the half and half, the old and the new over there. But it's all about education, and as we reinvent ourselves, we can look at education as the center of what we're going to be. So if you have the new school building right across from the library, they're going to complement each other beautifully. And then we put the new school building where Peck is also, that's going to just upgrade that neighborhood as well. All of this in the press makes us look really good. And where we're going.
Dennis, can you wrap up, please?
Oh, absolutely, I will. So, so I would ask you this. I'll just ask you this. In the end, I would ask you tonight. I would ask you please not to table it. I would ask you to vote just to bring it to the full city council without a recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, please.
Hi, I'm Ashley Tyler. I live at 67 Sycamore Street. I wanted to thank Councilor Murphy for responding to my emails this week and your willingness to engage in an open discourse about the subject with both myself and my spouse.
Welcome.
That was not the response we got from all the city councilors that we emailed. I have a child at Metcalf, and I think you see a lot of Metcalf parents here because we have a pre-K to 5 school. We don't have a middle school option right now, and we're sort of in limbo. I love the building at Metcalf. It's not a building for educating the future. We need spaces that can handle the technology that our kids need to learn, and spaces for them to grow into productive members of our society and our community. I support these proposals for the 2 new middle schools, and I am encouraging you to just bring it to the people and let us vote on it.
Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else?
Hey everybody, Joshua Garcia,
2 Dunn Avenue. Actually, there was two things I wanted to bring up. Number one, I know the fire department has been patiently waiting this whole time. They are actually on your agenda, as well as the fire commissioners who are trying to navigate the politics here to see if whether or not there can be a stipend for the volunteer fire commissioner. So I do wholeheartedly support that, just to put that plug in there for you guys. So thanks for sticking around. The other component, I think it's clear. A lot of people out here behind me, as well as those that are across here, understand where I stand when it comes to this particular issue. It's been an issue that I've been behind for a very long time. I don't have to repeat a lot of what everybody already said in this room today. But certainly there was one thing I want to make clear. The one thing that I don't want to see on this subject matter is to see our community divide, right? Yes, I am for building these 2 new middle schools. I want to see it happen. Certainly, we have a infrastructure that's inadequate for our current middle school age students. I'm also a homeowner and a taxpayer, and it is frustrating for me every 3 months to write a $900 check to the city and to see taxes go up. That's frustrating as well. But I also support strategic investments, and what I see behind what has been done has been a great deal of due diligence for the last 3 years. And I've been spending the last month or so reaching across the aisle, talking to people that I know may not be in support of these ideas because of the raise in tax, and trying to find the questions to their answers, the questions to their particular concerns that they may have, doing what I can to have that discussion, not to change their mind and say, hey, do this or you're against our children, but to give them a different perspective. And I think that if you allow this to go on the ballot, we may be able to continue that conversation, to reach across the aisle, have the two-way conversation, and let's see what comes out of it. It's a very complex issue. I certainly don't envy being where you guys are sitting today, because I don't want to see anybody behind me, and I hope for the folks that are watching at home, being angry at any counselor who decides to vote against. But certainly I hope that each of the counselors take the opportunity and do your due diligence and look at the information that's there. A lot of the questions that you guys have, it's there. The answers are there. So even if you don't make a decision today, then maybe, I wholeheartedly agree with Representative Burks, who don't make no recommendation. Just bring it forward to the council, let the council vote on it. With no recommendation from the committee, either or. But whether the case, the conversation needs to be had, and let's move forward on that, on a good step forward here.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, and my daughter wanted to say something.
I want a nice school after I'm done with Metcalf. A school who has science labs and a school who has math labs.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I won't ask for her name and address. We'll let her off the hook. Is there anyone else that would like to speak? Yep. Okay.
Hopefully I'll be the last one because everybody wants to go home, I know. So my name's Mildred Lefebvre again. I'm Ward 1 school committee member. I have stood around here kind of listening and observing and hearing everybody's points. Those that are for it, those that are against it. Clearly I've also looked around and seen who's here. And we have yet to have heard from those who it's impacting the most right now, which is our students in the current middle schools and the experiences that they're going through each and every day. I'm sorry?
I have a daughter in 7th grade for the record, so you did hear from a parent with a kid in middle school.
Right, I heard from a parent. I'm talking about the students themselves. It's not just the parents. As elected officials, we're not just responsive to constituents, we're also responsive to those who don't vote. We're responsive to those that decide not to come out and vote, because our decisions are kind of it impacts everybody, correct? So for me, I just feel it needs to be on the ballot. Let the people decide. I'm a renter, I'm not a homeowner, but I am looking to buy a home, and when I find that perfect home, whatever the price tag is, I'm gonna get it here in Holyoke, and that's what I tell my husband. We're not moving anywhere else. We're gonna stay here, and my kids are gonna continue going to the schools here, even though I only have one left going through. So please, I ask you guys, let the voters decide on this. Let everyone that's going to decide to go to that poll, maybe they might decide it's a no. Maybe they might decide it's a yes, but give them that opportunity. Just don't take it away from us. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Dory Brooks. I'm from Jones Whitsitt Architects. And I think the public is, everyone's spoken who was looking to speak. There are a lot of questions that came up that I would love to address. It is true that we have talked about a lot of these issues at the Advisory Building Committee, and I do think there's a lot of information, maybe too much information for people to absorb at once. But rather than address the specific issues, I just wanted to get to the issue that you all are talking about putting this forward to the council, and at what date should that vote occur. And I know that the question when it was brought to the action was brought forward was quite a while ago. So at the time, April 30th seemed, when we first talked about April 30th, I think that was probably, Mike might remember, I think September we started discussing the date. So it does feel rushed now. We have had a very transparent process, and we have been as available as we humanly could be. And we've had numerous public conversations, but it's not at all unusual that it's not that until the moment it becomes real that everybody starts to pay attention. And we know that that's what's happening, and that this we should celebrate is a good sign that people are paying attention and want to know. So I agree with the sentiment that April 30th is too soon. I am concerned about the idea of November because I think you have momentum to this issue now and people are paying attention. Summer can have a big impact on that. And also, as Kevin said, this can become very divisive. So I just wanted to pledge that our firm has really made tremendous effort to be available wherever we can be. We've, if anything, demanded that they make more opportunities for us to present. And we will continue to do so. What we could use in this is the assistance of the City Council in making that happen. You know, we would love to have more opportunities to present to you and more opportunities to present publicly in a way that really answers these questions more thoroughly than I think some people feel they've had them answered. Because I have great confidence. Our job is to be your architect. We don't come into this with a set view of what should happen. We go through a very lengthy process and a very thorough process with a really amazing group of people in your advisory building committee. And we ask them a lot of these difficult questions too. Why not an 1,100 student school? It'd be much more efficient cost-wise up front. And there were arguments, very good arguments as to why that didn't make sense. So a lot of the questions that you've asked, I think we can more thoroughly present the answers. And maybe everybody won't agree with those answers. I actually think you should, acknowledge that the reason why you empowered a committee to be there to do that is so they could more thoroughly investigate those questions than the entire community could and have a little bit of confidence that they did their job. But I understand that still people have every right to ask these questions, and we would love to work with you to answer those questions. Anywhere you call for us, we'll be there and continue to talk and continue to speak up.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to speak? Okay, we'll close public comment. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, sir.
Good evening. My name is Ken Pierce, and I live at 338 Mountain Road. I've been at home actually watching this on television, and started to look at my son, who's in second grade in the Metcalf School, and I began to think to myself, is all of this worth it? And I began to think about how would I explain this to him, that there's a vote going on about his future, about the school's future, and where he'll go in a few years. And try to think about, there's tax. I understand that. I'm a property owner. I pay taxes. I understand the financial increase that will come my way. And I think about all of that. I've heard other speakers come by and talk about how new schools will improve our city as a whole, bring our community together, things of that nature, right? And all good and fine. But ultimately, I've come here, and again, thank you for the opportunity to say that I am for whatever needs to be done to move this forward to council. Is it an increase to my taxes? Fine. If I can look at my son tomorrow and say that I came forward, I was brave enough to talk, brave enough to say that you are worth whatever that is, right? And look around at my neighbors, fellow citizens of the city, and say, hey, we can all come together around this. This is worth it. So that's all I wanted to come and say. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you for coming down.
Have a great night.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to speak? Okay. Sure. A quick one.
I just want to come back to the ballot question. Again, Kevin Jourdain, 18 Raymond Avenue. Numerous people have stood here and said, vote this out, whether it's with recommendation, no recommendation, send up. You have no articulable wording for the question. We don't even have a decided date. So my point is the committee needs to weigh in on all this and study this. I mean, to expect you to just vote on this and go forward tonight, I don't think that's a reasonable request of you. So I just wanted to put that out in fairness to the committee.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to make a few comments, and then I'm going to turn it over. And I do have a lot of questions. I have 9 pages of questions that I wanted to get answered before I would vote on it. And I will not vote to send something to the full council without my knowing that if I'm sending it and someone asks me that question, I know the answer. And there are a lot of questions, and I've talked to Dennis last night, and I've talked to other people expressing my concerns to get all the information out and to make what I believe will be the best judgment for the community, which includes a quality education, which includes making sure homeowners can afford their homes and to make economic, but there's all kinds of things, they all tie together, and to try to avoid divisiveness. Because I've been there. When this city was the most divisive it ever was, I ran for mayor because it was divisive. Obviously, I didn't get there because I'm still only in that council picture. But, all right, I mean, we got to do this, whatever we do together. But we don't want to rush. And I, for one, would not want to rush. But I do want to open it up for questions. And if I might possibly ask, because I am a little older, if I could take a 5-minute recess so that the older guy can kind of take care of himself, I would appreciate that.
Well, if you have to make a motion and take 5 minutes for recess, I'd make a motion for that.
Okay.
Second.
Motion. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Oh,
No,
so
you gotta stay.
Hey,
So
just because I'm the oldest.
we'll be back up at 10.
We'll be back at
10?
2 minutes of 10. 2 minutes of 10. We're on a 5-minute warning.
Can you get? No. Can you go?
You're good. Yeah, I'm good.
That's true.
Spend money you don't have. I didn't have time to go into all these. $60 million in unfunded pension liability. I wonder how many people here understand all this. $300 million in unfunded employee health insurance. Do they feel employees should have health insurance? I don't know. Maybe they shouldn't. $20 million CSO.
Why don't you send me a text?
I mean, those are all, it's like, we got walk and chew gum on this thing.
She's got 9 pages.
Catch you later.
I know.
Nobody cares.
We're gonna meet tomorrow. 80, we qualify for 80,000.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Plus we get 10 bonus points for a lot. Because that's one of the contingencies of the grant. If you're looking for a civil intern.
Yes.
Such as special.
I love how we're compared to Cambridge and Wellesley. If we were Cambridge and Wellesley, we wouldn't be having this conversation. And you wouldn't be working there.
Yeah, I wouldn't.
Because we're not Cambridge or Wellesley.
Actually, my very close friends.
I wish we were.
They have a ton of money.
Yeah, oh yeah. And I don't think they have state-appointed receivers running their schools either.
It'd be a nice thing they spend like $30,000.
Oh, it's incredible. Do you know that Cambridge has the largest stabilization fund in Massachusetts? Over $40 million.
Is that right?
Just these 9 questions? Is that all we're going to do?
You said 9
9 questions and wrap it up? Oh.
But
Can,
yeah. I know. I was kidding, like 5 minutes.
Thank God there's somebody that's over 70 here.
If I could just ask a question to Margaret and them. But no, when we start back up, because we're going to start back up in a minute.
I sat there and I was like, oh boy.
Yes. We were before all this, but it's okay. I would have been watching her from home anyway, so it's not. I'm just watching her. It's all good.
Do you?
Okay, I'm going to call the charter.
You're going to need a motion.
Yeah, I'm going to entertain a motion that.
Motion is to come out of recess and go back into the Charter and Rules
Second.
Committee.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye. And then you want a motion to table this discussion so that we can take up the other tabled item and then go back.
And then we'll come back. We're not tabling the table. We're going to table to take up the fire. The
That was
first it was
tabled earlier.
Item number 2.
So the
and we'll go
motion,
back.
the motion is to table item 5, to take up item 2, and then we'll return to item 5.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, okay. So,
Motion is to take up item 2 from Councilor Sullivan.
Second.
okay. So we're taking that off the table. All in favor?
Aye.
Councilor Sullivan?
Thank you. This came out of a bunch of different things we had done going through the different ordinances and issues relating to the fire department. One of them, one of the things that struck out to me was we've got a DPW commissioners, we have water commissioners, housing authority, and every one of them receives a stipend. Why is it in the charter that the fire commission, a very important role, I would think almost as much as a DPW commissioner or anything else, should serve without a stipend? So that was my first question. The second question to that would be, they have to deal with a lot of tough issues as well, that maybe by offering a stipend, we could attract more people and have a larger pool to draw from also. And I'm not saying that anybody that is a fire commissioner is doing a poor job or that we have inadequate people, but we might have a larger pool to pool from also. And, basically the inadequacy of why all the other commissions and not this one. So I thought it was something to address.
Okay.
Yeah.
Comments?
I know other communities, Westfield being one of them, has a stipend for their fire commissioners. I know a few of the members. So I have no problem supporting that. I guess the issue is the process of your order is to compensate them. We'd have to come up with the amount of the stipend and then have that order put into place. So for us, we can say that we support it, but ultimately have to come back and actually put in the number and everything else and make it a true order.
Right. I understand that. That's why I wanted to get out for discussion, see what everybody, see what everybody else felt about it. As an opening discussion, why wouldn't we do the same as a water commissioner? And I don't know what a DPW commissioner makes. Is it the same? Housing authority, is it the same? Gas and electric, is it the same? Is there any?
We did receive a list maybe a year or two ago on what commissioners receive it and who doesn't get a stipend and who does. So we do have that. The clerk can provide that as an update.
Councilor Bay?
Thank you. I think we have a lot of people serving on many different commissions. Some do receive stipends, many don't. And, I appreciate the spirit of you wanting to give them some compensation. We defer to the mayor in terms of these appointments. And I think when we get the city into a better financial place where we have a financial plan, we have a debt plan, we manage our capital expenses, and we manage our ever-increasing spending that's happening at the rate of between $1 and $2 million a year, and we're at the cap, then we can start thinking about these nice things that we would like to do for people who are currently volunteering, of which I'm greatly appreciative. But I really think we need to get our house in order before we're adding new spending. We're not even managing the spending that we're doing right now.
Yep.
And and the council just recently voted out to the mayor to seek a hard plan that has been recommended to the city by our finance advisor to say we have to get our house in order. We have a bond rating that we all think is great because it's better than it was, but it's not even an average bond rating of an average city. So it's not like we're sitting here doing a great job. We need to make serious structural improvements. And so for me, I can't start doing nice extra things till we get the fundamentals put in place, and they're just not there yet. Thank you.
Councilor Lisi?
Councilor Sullivan can respond before.
Okay, Councilor.
I'd just like to respond to that a little bit. First of all, as far as other commissions, I don't see anything as important as the fire commission, all right, such as a historic commission or a comparison to the other commissions as far as its importance. It sure stands up there in my mind, a fire commission with a gas and electric commissioner or a DPW commissioner or a water commissioner. So I don't think that's a fair comparison. Number two, as far as $15,000, if we were talking top of the line, I think the most I've heard is $5,000 stipends out there, all right? We're talking $15,000 expense a year. If $15,000 was enough to attract a wider pool to choose from, and possibly some more aggressive individuals interested in the position, maybe we wouldn't have some of the other issues that we have as far as some of the other negotiations, personnel problems, stuff like that get tackled that in the long run cost us more money. And some of the other issues could be sorted out ahead of time before they get to us and have clearer answers to, such as bonding for fire engines and things like that. So I don't think it would be wasted money. And as far as $15,000 in a city that has a budget of $125 million, all right, that's a drop in the bucket. And I think the long-term benefit of that would far exceed it.
Okay,
I
thank
just
you.
want to respond
Okay.
because I did not say anything that implied or said anything about relative importance. I was talking about the fiscal management of the city, not the importance of the board. Thank you.
And I agree.
Councilor Lisi?
Thanks. I was just going to offer a few points. First of all, the G&E is the top paying stipend grantor at $5,000 per commissioner, but we don't pay that money. It's the G&E's. It's the G&E's own budget that covers that. There are a number of bodies that are receiving $3,000 or $1,000 stipends that the city controls. And I think the other important board that's up there that doesn't receive a stipend that does very important work for the city is the planning board. So I think, grabbing that list that was created for us about 3 years ago that had a comprehensive list of all the boards in the city and which ones are receiving stipends, which ones are not receiving stipends, and how much each group is receiving is going to be useful information. I would also like to I'd like to see what Article 2 includes, because if it includes compensation for example, the planning board, I'd like to do them simultaneously instead of doing just the fire commissioners. It would depend on what Article 2, Section 42-41 includes. I think that it's worth looking at. I think that the devil's in the details, and coming to some rationale for the amount that we're going to give the commissioners, for the duration of the term or for each year, and things like that are going to be important questions to answer.
I believe it's been almost a year since I filed this order, but I believe 42-41 deals strictly with the fire department, not with any other commissions.
Thank you. Any wish of the committee?
Well, we can always come back with a price in a sense of what you're looking for, as well as we're going to tie it to other departments. So can we say it's complied with, then to come back with, or do you want to table it and then come back with something else? How do you want to?
I would rather say tabled than complied with.
Okay, so.
And if we've got the chief here, I'd like to hear if anybody else has any input, any of the fire commissioners or anything to add to it.
So motion would be to suspend the rules, allow the chief or commissioners to speak.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Oh.
Good evening. My name is George Meddy. I'm one of the fire commissioners. I live at 7 Hemlock Drive in Holyoke. Retired in 2016 as head of contracts division. I was division contracts director for Department of Defense. I just want to say that my past year as a fire commissioner, my experience as a manager certainly helped out. I think myself, Josh Garcia, and our new commissioner, Jeff Trask, has helped save the city money in the respect that I was on part of the negotiation team for the city, along with city solicitor Paul Pear. I think we did our best. We spent a lot of time negotiating, preparing to negotiate. If I was billing you my rate that I retired at, you'd be spending probably $7,000 or $8,000 in my bills. Not that I expect that. As a volunteer, I'm a volunteer on the library board. I'm a city director on the library board. I just think the work we do can help save the city money by the actions we take, or the actions we don't take, on the other hand. So I think it's important. I've seen a lot of personnel issues in the Holyoke Fire Department. I couldn't believe, quite frankly, how many personnel issues there are. So we do spend a lot of time doing that. I really support getting a stipend. I think it's important that you do that. I think it's honoring the work that we do on that commission.
Okay.
That's all I really want to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jeff Trask, 28 Central Park Drive here in Holyoke. Recent addition to the Holyoke Fire Commission, appointed back in June of last year. My experience is over 15 years in public safety, starting off with working in the city of Chicopee as Director of Emergency Management, then worked for the State Emergency Management Agency for 7 years, was Emergency Management Director over at MIT for 3 years, and then over at Mass Mutual for 3 years, and was recently recruited for a position over at ISO New England here in Holyoke, basically heading up their emergency preparedness, business continuity, and resilience activities. At various times in my career, I, along with George, was a manager of a large team, about 100 people, several $1 million budget. I think that I agree with Councilor Sullivan in his assessment that if you want to professionalize the role of the commissioner, you may have to offer some sort of a stipend in order to attract somebody to give up their time to serve in this capacity. Commissioner Meddy and I took this position as a volunteer, so there is no expectation of a stipend. Live in the city, I want to give back to the city. But again, I mean, the argument that this will help to professionalize the role of the commissioner is a valid one. Also, the fire commission is charged with some pretty heavy responsibilities. The commission is responsible for appointing the fire chief. It's also responsible for hiring firefighters, promotions, and then some of the more, management type activities, being on the negotiating team, dealing with grievances and personnel issues. So it occupies a lot of time, out of our days and our lives. So again, it's a commission with a lot of responsibility. Sometimes it weighs a heavy burden on the commissioners. And again, I support the actions of this committee pursuing this stipend.
Okay, thank you. Chief?
Councilors, thank you. Councilor Sullivan, thank you for bringing this up. And I completely agree 100% that they should have a stipend. So many different talents come to the fire department and they bring their own skill set. Commissioner Trask just told you what he does, emergency management, which is part of our job. Commissioner Meddy, he's done management for years. Josh Garcia, he's an organizer, he works for Pioneer Valley Planning, and he plans things out. So when you bring in all these different skill sets and you get these higher level people coming in, if we can keep them to help move the fire department forward, it's a great skill set to have for me. So when I bring stuff to the table to them, we all sit down, we figure it all out. They've helped me with many items, I help them with things. It really works out, it's a good team. I've had many commissioners come through since I've been there, you all know that. So I've learned many different things. Personnel issues is the #1 thing that we do have to deal with, and the commissioners, I should say, and they've always been very professional, always above board. They follow all the rules, they make sure everything's done. And whenever you see the TV cameras coming in because there's an issue, you see a fire commissioner up there on the TV camera, right? Because in the end of the day, they are the appointing authority. And I'm not just saying that because you guys are my boss. I'm always sincere. I'm civil service. Once I'm appointed, I'm here. But they do a great job. They're really helpful to me. They are the segue into making sure that we have the equipment and the proper personnel to run the fire department. And they've always been great for me. So I completely agree there should be a stipend for all the work they do. Nobody is disconnected anymore in the world. I text these poor guys all the time. I email them. I call them. We're always in constant contact. They don't have a clock to say when I'm doing that. So you just have to think about that. All right?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Make a motion to table, and then whatever you want to add.
A motion by second. Okay, motion to table. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? 3-0. Okay, tabled.
Motion to go back to item 5.
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Nobody? Okay. So let me, I'm going to make a few thoughts here to just make sure that, first of all, we obviously are having a late meeting, and I want to make sure that, my expectation is we're going to have other meetings. So, but I don't want to keep everybody out here till 3 in the morning, especially me. But taking care of myself. But I do want to start some of the questions and comments, and if it would be all right with everybody, I would like to entertain a motion to have Dr. Wright come in.
Yeah, motion. I think it's still under suspension, so he can come up.
Dr. Wright, can you come on in?
I asked the project manager to join me as well.
No.
No?
You can, but.
Okay.
Yeah.
Come on in. Yeah.
Come on, yeah.
I have to have a sense of humor. Despite what you're saying.
You gotta laugh at it. You gotta laugh.
Could you tell us when you're joking?
There are a lot of people that never get my humor, but hey, I'm trying to help you out there. Okay. So, I mean, I'll ask one question, I'm gonna go around, and I'm gonna try to make sure everybody gets a chance. But my very first question, and it goes to the ballot question, and it really goes to the description of the full question. And basically I'm asking, why would I agree to put a ballot question with significant financial implications on the ballot without providing voters the details of all the costs associated with that question? And that's partly to you, but it's also just a general statement. And so, you know, I mean, right now the question, and I don't think you probably wrote the question, I'm pretty sure you didn't.
No.
Okay. So, I mean, to me, right now, if I were to vote to send a question out, we have to have a whole lot more detail in terms of what's going on. Councilor Lissy?
If you don't mind, I'd like to just say a few things, and then I guess we could get more details from where it's going. But, I mean, it seems that there's one concrete number that we can work with, possibly two, right? And the one concrete number is that we need to bond, if we want to move forward on this project, for $132 million. How we structure the debt, the reimbursements, and really the numbers thereafter are really kind of flexible and up for interpretation. So there's really only one number that we could put on the ballot. I think that I heard in the public comment, we should put that, you know, this is how much we're going to bond for, this is the debt exclusion, it's going to cost this much to the average homeowner for, you know, $200,000 home, this $270. I think that doesn't make any sense at all, because that's only one data point, and it's not really capturing what's at stake here. I think the only thing that we could put on here that gives any more, like, anything that would be more concrete, the only thing that's concrete out there is a $132 million bond. I mean, if you wanted to add that language, I think that makes sense. Any other language that complicates this, I think, is not a fixed number in the big picture of things. I think the receiver and also the project manager may have a different idea, but that's where I'm coming from at this point.
Okay, thank you. And then I know you had a question, right? Let me just make one other point. I spoke with the city clerk today, and first of all, April 30th for her office would be extremely complicated. And she certainly, despite the fact that I think she lives with this guy, she said, you know, I'm glad you came to talk to me, because someone's got to talk to me about this. So she did indicate to me that would be a very difficult time for her to do. It's a very busy time in the office, closing out the month of April. And so she definitely was looking if we could do it. If we are doing a special ballot, that special ballot would be later, and that she would have more advance warning about it. So just to keep that in mind. Councilor Sullivan?
Yeah, thank you. I had a list of things, but for the sake of time, I'm going to limit right now to things that exactly pertain to what's in front of us. Not any of the arguments we heard about needs for school or any of the other things, just the ballot question, right? So the key things I heard tonight, we heard about an if needed possibility, all right? I don't know how, I think this is a tough one, but to me it would make it a lot more palatable. But how do we hold the administration's feet to the fire, both on the school side and on the executive side here, all right, to make sure that happens. Once we vote this, you know, we've opened the piggy bank, right? To you know, a promise that it could be a lower number, you know. So one of the things I think to have on the ballot question is up to but not to exceed, all right, would be one of the clarity things that was mentioned several times by Councilor Jordan, all right? And I think one of the things we really have to consider is having it be a residential tax rate only, all right? What's abundantly clear to me is the effect on the business community is devastating. Other communities have done debt exclusion overrides and on the residential rate only and not included the commercial rate. And to give you an example of why I think this is the most very, very important, right now, everybody keeps bringing up the mall, so we'll use the mall as an example. The mall would pay 20% of the cost of the new school, and that's just not right, for no other reason than that. We do have a big problem. I've been talking with our auditor about it. He realizes it's something else we have to take up with the commercial rate. We have all the commercial buildings on Northampton Street, not all, but most of them are paying in the neighborhood. And this is from research done by what was presented to us by Marcos Marrero as why the debt exclusion override would be good. You use his average number of $1.20 a square foot. Most of the businesses on Northampton Street, we're talking Friendlies, the banks that we've been dealing with, Nick's Nest, they're paying $6 a square foot. The mall's paying $6 a square foot. Our new marijuana facility is paying 28 cents a square foot. All right?
They haven't been reevaluated.
Pearson Development, the owner of the building they're renting from. Okay?
No debating, you gotta.
Right.
Not debate.
Thanks. We have other buildings, Pearson Development. They're in at 80 cents a square foot. And I can go on and on and on the list like that. So within the commercial community, there's a tremendous inequity to the point where if we did a proper, over the next couple of years, valuation survey of the commercial properties in Holyoke, a lot of this is provided naturally through the residential process, through MLS, and a lot of it's available. But what's going on commercially in this town is very inequitable, all right? And we need to address that to the point where even the overall, if that was addressed, the overall tax burden on the commercial properties overall would probably come down. All right? It'd be, the amount of dollars they would be paying for some of the undervalued properties, and that's what the problem is, undervalued properties in the commercial sector, and that burden being carried unfairly by some of the others. So we have to address that. And also, we got to keep in mind, the ballot question isn't the answer to this. It isn't. What if the voters vote no? How are we going to do the schools then? We've got to start developing other plans in the meantime, and this is one that Councilor McGee and I have put forward now, right? And there are several other mechanisms, and including the pension obligation bond, which we've got to, it doesn't stop us from getting the ballot question, but the ballot question could backfire. So you get back to we would need to address the fixed income situation, right? And make this thing as transparent as possible to everybody. I myself either, I don't know where this wording comes from. I would like to see it as a ballot question. The argument about the 20,000 voters and 7,000 households, that's just not a valid argument. Is that not being fair? How many households do you know that only have one voter? Most of them have two, if not more. So that's not a valid argument. All right, it should be a ballot question, but it's got to be a properly worded ballot, and we've got to develop the plans in case it fails. Because there's no question in my mind we do need these schools.
Okay, thank you. Any questions?
Okay. What is the drop dead deadline that we need for the MSBA?
So I'm going to answer that question. I'm going to go back to this other question about the language. We submitted the schematic design, which is the final feasibility stage, on February 20th, and that puts us on track for a scheduled MSBA board meeting on April 10th. terms of the funding agreement that the city has signed to date with the feasibility requires the municipality to secure the local, so the MSBA will vote on the 10th their commitment to fund the share that's been established. The funding agreement requires that the municipality secure their share of the vote within 120 days. Now, there's a couple of choices there. So one is we can ask the MSBA to delay their vote, which would delay, believe the next vote, April, May, June? I think it's June. They meet approximately every 2 months. And they would be okay with that. And that would reset the 120-day time clock. The other would be to let it go to the April board meeting, and then we could ask them to extend the 120 days. I believe that's happened in the past. And, you know, the MSBA here is in partnership with you. I mean, they've invested far more money in this process in Holyoke than you have, because they're actually paying the full 80% of the feasibility study. So they will work with the city to kind of make that work. I think, as was mentioned earlier, when you start to delay beyond that point, you really are starting to have an impact on the ability for the project to move forward with the current estimate of escalation and the completion date that we've established, which is the beginning of the school year in 2022. So I hope that answers that question. I wanted to also just speak to the ballot language.
Can I just interject one?
Sure.
In terms of what you just said there, so basically if they met in June,
yeah,
we would have 120 days from June, which would be October 10th approximately.
Correct.
And if we could get them to say, and your election's coming up next, I mean, it would be somewhat ridiculous of us if they did that, and we would have a special election in September or something along that lines, when we're going to have an election in 3 or 4 weeks. So, I mean, is there any negotiation that can be done there?
That's why I'm thinking, you know, what I need to do is go back to the MSBA and say, this is what I'm hearing. Give me your 2 cents about it. You know, it's very important here to be very transparent with them. Mm-hmm. Again, they've invested money in your community quite a bit, you know, even prior to the work that has been happening since I came to work as the project manager. So they're invested in making it work. Okay. You know, I do want to stress though that the only way that if you wait until the November vote, the city council would have to then really quickly execute the contracts to do the design work that is then required. And I will say, having been through trying to get the additional appropriation to study the second building, which was a rather small amount of money, and that took 3 months, 4 months, I have some concerns about that. So I guess what I would say, I'm a little bit like what Dory was saying earlier, like, you know, we can do this, but the city council has to be a partner in it. Otherwise, I feel like it's kind of all bets are off in terms of the, you know, the impact on, we'd have to go back and really look at the construction cost and the escalation, and I think you'd have to have a plan B for not being in the schools in September 2022.
Okay. Good stuff.
If someone else has a question on that, anyone? No, I'll just want to touch on some stuff. First, thank you to everyone who did come in, that spoke tonight, as well as at home that are watched or still watching. We touched on it. We don't want to be divisive on this. This, whatever side you stand on, it's a debate for Holyoke's future. That's a good thing, whether you're for or against it. So we don't have to fight about it. We don't have to get mad at each other. You know, emotions get high. I said that in here before. Emotions get high in here. You walk out the door. We have a big weekend coming up. You're back to square one where you all work together. So we're not going to be divisive on it. It is a question on how it works and how the funding works. Transparency, that was brought up many, many times. You couldn't be more transparent. You came to me from the very beginning. We took it to the school committee. We took it to the joint school committee. You came to finance several times. It's been out there. there is an issue of there's a lot out there, and you pointed it out, and whether or not it's been out there enough to have people fully understand it, that is debatable. This man has come to many of my ward meetings and laid it all out from the beginning on how things work. He actually had me in McDonald's showing me the schematics of the buildings and the ratings and everything else, and I was colorblind, so I just nodded because it was all in colors. So, you know, we have to laugh. I know it's a big issue, but we can't fight over it. If you look at other communities that brought this up, you know, just for one school, they didn't fight, they voted, and they did their thing. So for me, we're not going to be divisive. I don't think we have been. I think it's just emotions. We do have a lot of questions. I know one of the suggestions was maybe come back in, do a question and answer, and just throw more out there for people. My view is, and I forgot to say this in the beginning, full disclosure, I have one who's at Ian White now in the dual language. I'll have one next year, so that's 2. I'm vested. I think, you know, when I hear people say stuff about the Holyoke school system, I laugh at them. I said, I'll compare my school system versus your any day. If we can help improve on that, that's our job. So, you know, there's always a cost to that. My thing is, if you go back, since Joe's not here and it's his order, history lesson, and I'll do a Joe. When this stuff started to come about, I wasn't on the council yet, but they wanted to go from getting rid of the middle school status to K to 8. And I said, you're out of your mind. And I wasn't elected, so who was going to listen to me? And we went to that model. And in doing that, we got rid of Lynch. We got rid of Highland School, which is now a park. We got rid of Kirtland School, which is now a park. So we took away the system, and then we started taking away the buildings. So now what we're left with is a lot of old buildings that either you rehab, or 2, you need some new buildings because you got rid of some. So we were put in a dilemma. It's a catch-22. Once again, we're back to how do we fund it. And to me, because of that issue that developed over time, we have to do something. It is not, in my view, and this is just my personal view, it is not up to a small body of people to say what that is. It is a answer by the people. This is a big issue. And therefore, it's up to the people to make that determination. So, yes, I will vote for a ballot question. As we're just told, April 30th is not a drop-dead deadline. I know we can negotiate to get that and therefore get more answers out there. Do it correctly in order to have a ballot question. We got to work on some language. I think we're all going to agree that the language should be done. But I'm not going to take away that right for people. That's me personally. They have that option to vote on this. It's that important. It's not up to a small number of us to make that determination that they can't vote on it. So for me, I know there's still a lot of questions. It is 10:35. We've been here since 7. I believe we should give all the questions that we have. If we want to keep going, I'll stay here till 2 in the morning. I've done that before with Kevin. So it doesn't matter to me how long ago, but I do believe to make it more efficient, those who are at home are probably gone to bed, that we get questions to the committee. We invite you back to just do a question and answer, keep it going, get it out online, do more ward meetings. I mean, we're going to do that. But then ultimately, we need that drop-dead deadline so we don't do cost overrides, so we don't add to the budget even more, but we do it proper. That's my thing, is we have to do it properly. So for me, I would like to fix up the language to the ballot question. I'd like you to come back in to get you to do more question and answer, and then ultimately get it out to the people and get it on whatever ballot we need, whether it's June, July, whatever you tell us is that drop-dead deadline. And I think that, I know you kind of gave your answer of 120 days, but I really do believe a firm date, we now know April 30th is not really a firm date, it was kind of a projection. But tell us, so then that way we could do this correctly.
Councilor Lucy.
Go ahead. Do you want to speak?
No, you go ahead.
I just want to kind of piggyback on the last statement that Councilor McGee made. I think it's important to have the 100, like, I can't even figure out right now because all of my devices are dead or not connected to the internet anymore, but what is 120 days from the April 10th vote? That, I mean, that's an important date to have in mind.
July.
July what?
That they meet in.
July 25th. So I'm going to tell you right now, I would like to expedite the process before the November election because I don't want to go through the summer, because I think that's where we're going to breed the acrimony and the contentiousness within the community if we don't actually take action. We could get the information out there, we can document things, we could have the Q&A, but definitely by the end of the school year, I think we need to take that vote. But if summer comes and people disperse and this thing isn't settled, I think that that's really going to be a problem for our community. That's my 2 cents.
Okay, thank you. Again, though, I think we got it so it could be October 10th was if we were to delay the other meeting till June 10th. Is that correct?
Right. I mean, I think Rebecca's just saying for completely that reasons have to do with communication with the community that she thinks it would be better to do it sooner. And I've heard that argued both ways already extensively.
Okay.
So,
Councilor Bakeson?
Thank you. So if I understood you correctly, the board meets every 2 months, so it'd be meeting in April, June, August?
it's approximate. They meet approximately 6 times a year. And yeah, I think Dory's, you think there's a June, we can look it up.
So it could be scheduled that if the council did decide to move forward with the ballot question, that it could coincide with the November election, which people normally show up to vote at. And my concern, I have no issue or concern with the transparency of the proposals and the discussion and the debate over how to proceed. I mean, the irony is before us all that there was big debate and disagreement when we went to the K through 8. And as it turns out, the committee that was opposed to it was right, and they weren't listened to at the time. So it goes. So here we are, but I don't have a problem with the transparency relative to the recommendations. My fundamental issue with this, and I've been talking about this at the City Council for years, is our financial management in the city. And we have once again fully endorsed to the mayor with the recommendation strongly coming from our finance advisor that we get a financial plan for our city in place. So we have these meetings and we get the promise of a future plan and future savings once we vote to spend the money, or we get the people to vote to override or bond exclusion or whatever it is. But we need to have a fiscal plan in place for the city before we enter into any kind of spending, from my point of view. So my issues are not with the project per se. It's how is the city going to fund the bond? Because regardless of whether the people vote for it or particularly if they vote for it, we still have to pay for that bond. It's not going to be, I mean, when I was trying to ask the mayor, how are you putting that into the budget? He was kind of acting like it's free money, but it isn't. We're going to have to be paying back that bond. And I need to see a plan for that personally.
Well,
or, I can support, because I'm representing constituents who are calling me relative to the affordability of this. And so I need to be able to answer their questions. That's where my questions come from. And they more lie relative to the city and the budget management and Cinder than specifically with you folks.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we're all the people with the skin in the game, that are gonna be dealing with this stuff for 30 years. A number of other people will, get the project going and then, here we'll be. So those are really more fundamentally my questions. But secondarily to that, if the will of the people is there to do it, and should the council vote to put the ballot question on the ballot, the only one I would even consider supporting would be in November, so that the public has an opportunity to be informed. Whenever we've had ballot questions of importance, we get a summary of the ballot question, we get an interpretation and a context of the impact and the implications of it, and most of the people that are calling me aren't on Facebook or the internet. They're not doing Google. They're not doing site searches. They're on Social Security, and they're reading their notices that come with their bills. I mean, it's just the nature of the people that I'm hearing the most concerns from. So just to be clear on that, my issues are about the doability, not the transparency of your project, and it's a process issue in the city. And I feel that for people who want to rush it because then we won't have debate and acrimony, just want to push it through without people being aware enough of what is happening. So I take the opposite approach to that. And recently, I haven't had meetings, but usually I have a lot of community meetings to keep people up to date on things. But fundamentally, it's a very complex funding issue and budget issue that I think we have to have a frank discussion within the city as we contemplate putting it forth.
I just want to clarify the issue about the bonding. I mean, the purpose of the debt exclusion is to provide the revenue to pay for the bond. So, and that is why, the statement has been made by Cinder that because this came up at the Finance Committee meeting,
right?
Does the city have, funds within its budget to do this? And Cinder's comment was no. You would really need to pay for this outside of the city's budget through a debt exclusion, which would fully fund the bond. So that, in case that's not clear, because it's come up a bunch of times here tonight. I want to also just comment about the language. I believe the language that you were given has predecessor language that wasn't provided, that is, the piece that you're all looking for, and the MSBA has a standard format for that. So, obviously we need to provide that. I think what was provided was the form of the vote itself, not the predecessor language that gave the information that everybody's looking for. So we can work with, we can provide that. The MSBA they're very particular about what that language looks like. So, and they're very prescriptive about it.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to, in 1 minute, I'm going to ask if you want to make a motion for adjournment in 1 minute. And then I will be calling another meeting. I want to prepare you for some questions that I have and some people have told me I'm crazy, but I've got students at Lawrence School that are my constituents. They're not voting for me because I'm not running, but they would if I was. But they need to know in both scenarios, if this question passed, what happens to them in the interim, what happens to them after the fact. And that goes for every single school because they're all going to have some impact. And I don't want any of my voters voting, I want to build new schools, but I don't know what the direct impact now is for my student. And I think that should be part of this process. And that's something that has, to my knowledge, has been missing. I'm pretty conscientious when I was just an elderly citizen, reading the papers and trying to keep up with things. Mary, I am an elderly, but you're still a young one. But, when I can honestly tell you, as I'm going along here, I had many of these same questions. I'm saying, well, what happens here and what happens there and why not this and why not that? And I listen and I watch, and I was amazed at how many people do watch Channel 15 or Channel 12. It always amazed me. But I would watch it myself, and I would say, I wish I were there because I would ask that question and I would ask that question. So there's a lot of things I would want to ask. So number one is going to be if it passes, all the impacts, how it gets implemented, and not in general terms. I want to know how things are happening because if we're planning for this, I would think we've got a pretty good concept of what's going on, where, when, and how. And the next question is, if it doesn't pass, then what do we do? And what are the options? And how do we do it? Because I'm assuming we have to also be prepared for that. And the third option that I know people have told me this can't work or that can't work. I've toured with Dr. Reich 3 or 4 schools so far, I've been pleased with what I've seen. I've seen some good things, but I also want to know, could we build one, maybe not a super 1,100 school, 100 enrollment school, but could we build something that's in the 750 area? And would that lower the cost? And I tie that into the STEM Academy, which I did visit with Dr. Reich, and I was pretty impressed with the layout. I was impressed with what I saw for the most part with the discipline, although there have been a few people I would have done a little more discipline with. But overall, I thought they were pretty well informed. Their teachers were certainly dynamic in terms of what they were trying to do. So, those are the kind of questions that I need an answer. Obviously, I do have serious questions about a special election. I know people can tell me, well, if they don't vote, that's the way it is. But the reality is, in every election, when you have a general election, you get the most votes you're going to get. And to me, to unite the city, getting more votes, and whatever the outcome, has a better chance of uniting the city than getting few votes, and one group gets 1,351 and the other group gets 1,350. Have we really got a clear document? We've got 6 or 7% of the population that said this is what we want to do. If we're going to do this, I would like to see us getting a significant portion of the population saying this is the way we want to go. And the last part of my potential questions, and it kind of punches or ties into Councilor Sullivan. As soon as I got appointed, he was offering to meet with me, I think 2 days later, if I'm not mistaken. And he talked a lot about, can we do this without a debt exclusion? And he has some very good comments, and I'll have some questions that relate to his comments. But those are the kind of things from my perspective, that I want you to be prepared for. Again, I want to make sure that I'm putting something on the ballot that is the best that we can put on the ballot, and that does provide a good education, an excellent education. And Dr. Wright knows, he offered me a job about 2 weeks ago. He said, boy, you're good with kids. I'm going to give you a job. I turned him down. But, all those kind of things play a role in whether or not we have united a community around a mission, a cause, and that's my goal. Now, people are going to disagree with me. That's fine. And again, I appreciated today that I thought overall we had a pretty respectful meeting, and my hope is that every meeting we have, and it'll be 1, 2, 3 more, who knows, but that we do the same kind of thing. Respect each other's opinions, listen to the alternatives, and try to come up with the absolute best solution, formula for a quality education and an affordable community. And on that note, if anybody would like to adjourn, let me know. I'm sorry, Michael saw it.
I'll make it really quick for you.
Yep.
Margaret, the escalation cost, we keep referring, could you put a number on that?
Oh, your microphone.
$3 million.
Okay.
So I want to explain it. So we looked at what would happen if the 2 projects were built in sequence. So if you did one building and then another, so the escalation cost for that is $3 million. You can break it down. It's 3% a year. You can break it down to a monthly amount. But that's, really, you have to take that into consideration as you have this discussion.
So if we put this off 6 months, it'd be safe to say we're looking at an escalation of over $1 million.
Yeah.
Thank you. So my point is, when we talk about saving $50,000 by putting this off till November, that's not a good reason to put it off, right? Yes, we've got to do a better job of educating the public, getting the conversation, getting everybody engaged, right? But the risk of going to November and then having it come through the council and everything else that's involved, and getting into this escalation process of the numbers we have now, get it straight, far exceeds $50,000, far exceeds it. Everything we've heard from Cinder, all these things that we've heard, but we always refer to her by her first name, McNerney, right? Hilltop Securities, right? Was based on the current city budget. And to Kevin's point and Councilor Vacan's point, that's with proper planning and proper fiscal budgeting, what can be achieved in the next 3 years before we have to start making these is key. But we can't keep coming back to what Cinder said. Everything she said was, can it fit in the current city budget? Not next year's, what's coming before us, what should be coming out in the next couple of months, and what we're going to be voting cuts on, and how to make it fit are all things we can still address.
Mm-hmm.
It's not about the future. She didn't say we couldn't do it in the future, but she said with good planning, there's ways. But with the current city, the current budget, we couldn't do it.
Yep, I want to just, I like to piggyback tonight, I guess. So just to go off of the comments that Councilor Sullivan is making, so what Cinder said very clearly at that meeting was that debt exclusion is the only way that we can fund this project today. Then there's 3 years of time before we actually have to start paying that debt. She also said that what we could do is increase the sewer rate so that we're not using general fund dollars to pay for our sewers, that we could actually use the sewer dollars and from the sewer rate to pay for the sewer and free up $127 million from our general fund. And then she said we could use that $127 million to totally just pay off the debt exclusion. But she said we wouldn't need to do that necessarily, because if we have $127 million in our general fund, we could actually use it for other things. The debt exclusion is outside of the budget. And I think that's the important factor there. The debt exclusion is outside. Yes, we do have to pay it back, but we can find additional revenue streams. We could do a capital, investment project in terms of, fundraising in the community to help offset that. Councilor McGee and Sullivan seem to be suggesting that there's some money in the retirement fund that we could access. So, but these are all things that would actually reduce the debt exclusion. Really important. Debt exclusion is the only way we could fund the project today. Then there's other opportunities to bring in additional revenue to the budget. Part of the revenues that we bring in would have to go to the debt exclusion, but she said we shouldn't have to pay all of our additional revenues to debt exclusion, because we may want to, buy fire trucks. We may want to, do other things in the city. So we don't have to think of all of the new revenues that we raise as going only to debt exclusion and completely freezing our budget. And I think that's a really important point that came from that meeting that that hasn't been well understood.
Okay, thank you.
I just need to make one thing clear, because something was just said. Yep. There are no funds, no monies to be accessed in the pension fund.
I thought you had mentioned that, sorry.
That's what was said, though. That's not the case. And it's a complicated issue. It's something separate. But there's no monies to be accessed in the pension fund.
Councilor Vacan.
So to one of the points that Councilor Lisi just made, one of the recommendations was to increase the sewer rate, which would free up $1.7 million. We did that. Okay, that's already happened. And what's happening with that money? It's just getting spent. It's not getting put into a debt management fund. There is no financial plan happening. We have just sent to the mayor again a list of requests that mirror identically what our financial advisor has recommended to us that the city do for now how many years? More than one. So I'm just not buying the sales pitch that says, if we do the debt exclusion bond, we'll have a magical plan and then everything will be fixed. We just voted for a huge sewer rate increase that the people are still yelling about, and rightly so. That money, if we're speaking truth about changing how we're managing our money, should be being put in a debt stabilization fund to pay for these schools, if that is our community priority. Instead, it's going into the general fund. And everybody said, oh, good, now we have some more money to spend in the general fund, which is exactly the opposite of what our financial advisor is telling us to do. She is telling us to fund our debt and stop spending all the money. So I'm just saying, that's where I'm coming from. I know what I'm talking about. I have managed budgets. So you can't count it twice, you can't spend it twice, and if you throw it into your general fund and expense it out, you do not have it for your debt. So we need the plan, we need it to be happening, we need it to be real. And rushing a ballot vote is not gonna cause that to happen. Thank you.
Just one question. What is a good time frame, like 2 weeks, to have you come right back in for a Q&A? Or, I know you guys are...
We will come as soon as you will take us.
All right, so I would like them to come back into a charter and rules on this. I mean, we can table it, have them come back in at like 6:30 to open up as many questions. If we have to go to 11 o'clock again, we do. But get as much information out there as possible. We're still within the time frame that you're asking. And then that way, that piece is done. You're gonna provide us with sample language from the MSBA that is missing from this. Incorporate that in there. We deal with all the other things that we talked about tonight and ultimately produce something and get it out. Whatever date is ultimately given, that's fine, but I want you back in here as soon as possible. If it's 2 weeks, is that fair for that, or?
Yep.
So just
Fine.
no, I'm not available
Okay.
until April, but I don't want to hold things up if you want to have a meeting. It's fine.
Or whatever you, I'm looking at you too.
I'll get in touch with both of you, going over my calendar, making sure you can both make it, because I do think we should all be here. I mean, and I hope as many counselors come, because I think the more information we get, the better everybody will feel about it. So I will, if we can table it.
Motion is to table to invite back in all the parties.
Second.
Open it up to the camera and do Q&A.
Counselor Murphy, do you have a list of questions that you would want
And
to
for-
share with us ahead of time?
At
or-
the same time, provide any questions to the group that you have, so just,
Yeah,
I think
I'll
we all
put
have the
them in.
email.
Okay, that'd be
Forward
helpful.
all the questions over to them.
Okay.
Okay, so the motion is to table this, and we will meet in, hopefully in the next 2 weeks. We'll certainly not let it go too far, and as soon as I get confirmation on it, we'll let you know, and then we'll go from there. All in favor of being tabled?
Aye.
Anybody want to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
All right, all in
Second.
favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much, appreciate all your time.